Chapter 2899. In Yu's death caused a great shock in the distant spectators. Especially the experts of the Ying clan, all of them were furious. On the other hand, Lin Sun's Greenwood Taoist physique was already fighting the three divine sons of the Liangqiu clan. Bang! Divine radiance rumbled while Taoist arts whistled. The area around the Fortune Star was completely covered by the terrifying fluctuations of the battle. At least in the Fortune Star City, such a battle could be considered as a battle of the highest standard, and it belonged to the competition between the invincible ancestor realm experts of the Zhu clan. In Yu's death deeply stimulated Liangqiu, Hu and the others, and they didn't dare hold back and release their Taoist arts to the extreme. But the longer they fought, the more terrified they became. Because Lin Sun's clone was far stronger than they'd imagined. Even though he was besieged, not only was he not suppressed, but every single strike he struck caused an extremely great impact and threat to them. Rumble! Amidst the seething divine radiance, Lin Sun's punch almost knocked Liangqiu Feng's snow-white spear out of her hand. Before she could react, Lin Sun flashed forward while his sleeve fluttered, and then countless strands of sword qi whistled out. It just happened to be like a myriad of swords. Liangqiu Feng let out a shrill cry. When he dodged, it was already a step too late, and he was slashed by a few strands of sword qi. Blood sprayed all over his body, and he was almost dismembered. Kill! Liangqiu Hu and Liangqiu Jian came to Lin Sun's rescue in time, and they attacked with all their might. However, Lin Sun didn't dodge, and he forcefully resisted such attacks with his body while he raised his fist and smashed it out in one go. Bang! Liangqiu Feng, who'd already suffered a heavy injury, was directly killed by the punch, and his blood sprayed high. This! My God! How could he be so strong? A wave of exclamations resounded in the distance. All the spectators were shocked by this bloody scene, and they stood there in a daze. A clone was so domineering, and he killed Ying Yu and Liangqiu Feng as if he was invincible. Damn it! Liangqiu Hu and Liangqiu Jian's faces were extremely gloomy and furious, and the power they emanated grew even more terrifying. Every single move they made carried the might to destroy the heavens and the earth. Futile! Lin Sun's Greenwood Taoist physique sneered and waved his fists like a god. Every blow had the power to destroy mountains and rivers and crush the 9 heavens. In fact, Lin Sun didn't hold back from the beginning of the war. In such a situation, the greatest taboo was to be besieged and entangled. So, no matter if it was killing Ying Yu or annihilating Liangqiu Shi, both of them were the embodiment of his cultivation to the extreme. If he had held back, it would have been impossible for him to kill his opponent so quickly. In the eyes of outsiders, in Yu and Liangqiu you seemed very weak, but in reality, it was only because Lin Sun's attainments in the ancestor realm of Zhu Shi Great Emperor far surpassed those two. One should know that as early as when he became the Zhu Tian Emperor in the God's Relic, Lin Sun could suppress Qi Lingyun, Zhongli Shao, Mu Yi Qi Pejuan and other Zhu Tian emperors who had been practicing for many years. Later on, when he entered the eternal true world, his level of cultivation in Zhu Shui's progenitor realm continued increasing. When he reached the 6th heaven, he could even fight against those in heavenly longevity realm who were of a higher realm than him. How could an ordinary Zhu Tian emperor's progenitor compare to such strength? Yet now, even though Lin Sun was using the Greenwood Taoist physique, he possessed the same combat strength as his main body. Simply speaking, this was the might of a Tao ancestor who had reached the peak. In the past, he was invincible in the eternal true world. In the current ruins of creation, he was absolutely not someone that any divine son or goddess could go against. So what if he was a legend? So what if he was a monstrous genius? Lin Sun had long since become fearless in the battles on the path towards the Emperor realm. Bang! Liangqiu Jian was injured during the battle. Lin Sun's sleeve struck his body, and it was simply like he was struck by a divine whip. His skin split open, his bones broke, and his entire body was blasted flying. He let out a muffled groan, and his face was covered in pain. At this moment, it was already too late for Liang Qiu to help him. Bang! In the next moment, Liang Qiujian's body exploded into pieces by Lin Sun's slap. My lord! The experts of the Liangqiu clan in the distance couldn't help but cry out sorrowfully. Liang Qiuyu was dead, and now Liang Qiujian was dead as well. This was a huge blow to them. As for the others present, they were completely terrified. Even if they racked their brains, they wouldn't be able to imagine that even the divine princes couldn't suppress Lin Sun at all. Instead, they were slaughtered by Lin Sun one by one. This was as unreal as a dream. Now, do you think it's enough? Lin's Greenwood Taoist physique spoke. Now, only Liang Qiu remained. However, his expression was extremely terrible. The veins on his forehead bulged, his eyes were red, and he was filled with hatred. So what if you're arrogant now? You won't be able to walk out of Divine Fortune City in the end. Liang Qiuhu hissed. As long as I'm alive, there will be a chance. If I'm dead, there's nothing to talk about. Lin Sun said calmly. Whoosh! Liang Qiuhu's figure flashed, and he transformed into countless clones that teleported towards the surroundings. He actually escaped. Lin Sun waved his hand unhurriedly. A ray of sword qi condensed in the clear hum, and then split into 2, and then into 4. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a dense sword qi that covered the entire universe and flew away. This was extremely domineering. I don't care which of the figures you transform into is real and which is fake. I'll just crush them all. Bang! Bang! The countless figures of Liang Qiu burst like bubbles. Soon, a muffled groan resounded, and one of the figures sprayed out scarlet blood like a waterfall. It was Liang Qiu's real Taoist physique. He was heavily injured by a single sword strike and almost killed. Lin Sun, he intended to say something, but his figure was drowned by a rain of swords before he could finish speaking. He was minced into countless pieces of blood and dissipated in the void. You're going to die. Stop talking nonsense. Lin's Greenwood Taoist physique shook his head. Everyone was dumbfounded, and the shock in their hearts couldn't be described in words. Since the beginning of the battle, the 4 divine sons of Liangqiu clan and Ying clan had been killed on the spot in less than a quarter of an hour. Looking at Lin Sun, he was unscathed and calm. The difference between the two was obvious. The most shocking thing was that Lin Sun was meditating from the beginning to the end, and he didn't pay attention to what was happening around him. Lin Sun, you'll die a horrible death. Just you wait. Unless you hide in the city for the rest of your life, you'll definitely be cut into pieces. Numerous furious and resentful voices resounded in the crowd. Those were the experts of Liangqiu clan and Ying clan, and all of them were furious. What answered them was numerous sword qi that slashed down explosively. Every single sword qi seemed as if they had a mind of their own, and they accurately locked onto the enemies in the crowd before stabbing, slashing, slicing, twisting for a time. It was like numerous blood-red fireworks were blooming in the crowd, and it shocked the nearby crowd to the point they fell into chaos while screaming and dodging without end. On the other hand, the experts of Liangqiu clan and Ying clan had actually been slaughtered. This overbearing and iron-blooded scene caused the legs of many to go weak, and they couldn't help but recall the scene of Lin Sun killing all the way from the southern Heavenly Gate to Moonshine Lake when he'd just entered Fortune City. Do you want to die now, or do you want to wait for a sufficient number of people to die together with us? Lin Sun paid no attention to all of this, and he gazed at Yan Qingli, who hadn't made a move until now. Yan Qingli's beautiful face was pale while her slender and delicate figure was tense, and an indescribable coldness filled her entire body, causing her to feel as if she'd fallen into an icy pit. Especially when she was stared at by Lin Sun, she even had the impulse to turn around and flee at that instant. Yan Qingli was just about to say something when Lin Sun pointed into the distance and said, "Of course, you can also leave now. Otherwise, you won't have a chance to live." It was a very casual statement, without any humiliation or slander. But to Yen Qingli, this was already the greatest contempt. After a long time, Yen Qingli turned around with difficulty and left. The gazes of countless gazes were like numerous bright and sharp knives that fiercely stabbed into her heart, and it also minced her self-esteem into pieces. For a goddess like her, retreating without putting up a fight was destined to be the shame of her life. It might even leave a shadow in her Taoist heart and affect her future cultivation. But if she wanted to live, this was the only way. Watching her leave, the expressions of the people present were very complicated. Some were shocked, some were sighing, and there was also deep fear and reverence. Lin Sun had only sent out his doppelganger to suppress a group of divine sons. This had completely exceeded their expectations. Originally, they'd only thought that Lin Sun could at most be considered to be on par with those divine sons. But now they deeply realized how extraordinary Lin Sun was. Those monstrous geniuses could far surpass the masses, and he could slaughter all of them. Who else wants to die? In the silent and oppressive atmosphere, Lin Sun's eyes swept around. All the practitioners who met his eyes subconsciously avoided him, not daring to look into his eyes. Is that the place? Suddenly, a cold and aloof voice rang out in the distance. Then, a divine rainbow moved at full speed from the far horizon. Looking carefully, it was a black-robed man with an extremely terrifying aura. But when he was halfway there, he was stopped by a panicked and anxious voice. "Young master, don't go." The anxious voice quickly recounted everything that had just happened. Whoosh! Under countless astonished gazes, the black-robed man turned around and disappeared in the blink of an eye. That guy, many people were speechless and felt strange. That seems to be the divine son of the Dacha divine clan. He's too cowardly. Cowardly? If I were him, I would also run away as soon as possible. People were talking about it. Lin Sun's Greenwood Taoist physique didn't pay attention to them and went straight back into his body. The storm also came to an end. But the practitioners gathered here realized that as the news of today's event spread out, those divine sons who were on their way here might have to weigh the consequences of dealing with Lin Sun. It could also be inferred that if there was another assassination against Lin Sun like today, those who did it must have come prepared. Gradually, the crowd dispersed and spread the news of what had happened here. It could be foreseen that today's Fortune Divine City would be in a sensation again. In next to no time, the surroundings of the Star Vault of Creation had calmed down, and only a few cultivators were standing there. They were hesitating about whether they should enter the area of the Star Vault of Creation to comprehend the 100-plus complete cultivation systems. Lin Sun didn't seem to notice this at all. He just sat there like an eternal statue, motionless. P.S. It's a little late to add more chapters. Chapter 2900. 7 days passed in a row. Lin Sun, who was meditating and comprehending the secrets of hundreds of cultivation systems, was no longer disturbed. But in Divine City of Fortune, it wasn't peaceful during this period. Following the death of Liang Chuyen and the other divine sons, all the cultivators in the city realized that it wouldn't be easy to kill Lin Sun even if they sent out divine sons. As a result, during this period of time, no one went to make trouble for Lin Sun despite the commotion caused by the arrival of divine princes in the city. They all went into hiding. But the more it was like this, the more terrified the cultivators in the city became. Everyone was clearly aware that it was absolutely impossible for the various god clans to let Lin Sun off just like that, or perhaps an unprecedentedly great storm would erupt when more and more god children gathered here. Someone counted and found that in just 7 days, there were close to 30 divine sons from the divine clans. Every one of them was a legend of their era, and they'd once possessed unparalleled potential and achievements in the ancestor realm. Some of these peerless geniuses even had extremely dazzling rankings in the 100 Clans discussion of the way a long time ago. And now, these existences that would never step foot into divine city of fortune in the past had gathered close to 30 people in just 7 days. This caused an uproar in the city. Fortunately, these divine princes had chosen to lay low for the time being after learning about Lin Sun's actions. They didn't take any action. Only the atmosphere in the city grew more and more oppressive, and undercurrents were surging. During this period of time, a white-robed man with an outstanding appearance appeared near Star Dome of Fortune. He looked at Lin Sun, and his gaze quickly fell on a fiery red jade pendant hanging at Lin Sun's waist. He stared at the word Chun on it for a long time. Then, the white-robed man turned around and left. From beginning to end, no one paid attention to where he went. Even Lin Sun didn't notice. Half a month passed quickly. The number of divine sons that appeared in Divine City of Fortune increased gradually. During this period of time, many cultivators left Divine City of Fortune. On their way back, they also discovered that there were many extremely terrifying auras in the depths of the starry sky around the city. Every single one of them had the power of an eternal realm expert. They were like a group of gods that had descended to the mortal world, hiding in the depths of the starry sky and sealing off all paths of retreat for the Fortune Divine City. Undoubtedly, these were the seniors of the various divine clans. For the sake of the eternal coffin in Lin Sun's possession, all of them didn't hesitate to personally take charge here. Such a scene caused countless cultivators in the city to be astounded. Not to mention the divine princes of the various god clans, even the terrifying existences of the various god clans had arrived. Since ancient times, when had something like this ever happened? This was absolutely unprecedented. Because of this, they couldn't help but feel even more doubtful. Could it be that the secret hidden within the eternal coffin is really related to becoming the Lord of Creation? Who could obtain it and make the 100 races submit? There were all kinds of speculations, but they all pointed at Lin Sun. However, to everyone's surprise, even in such a situation, Lin Sun was still sitting under the star of fate day and night, as if nothing had happened to him. Such temperament, such courage, who wouldn't be convinced? Even if Lin Sun suffered a disaster, the movement he caused today is enough to be recorded in history. Countless people sighed and sighed with emotion. In fact, in recent days, many practitioners often came to see Lin Sun from a distance because of his fame in the vicinity of the Fortune Star. There were also many peerless geniuses of the divine princes, but no one went to provoke or disturb them, so that under the huge star of fate, only Lin Sun sat there alone. Time flew, and a month had passed since Lin Sun began to comprehend the great way here. On this day, as usual, there were still many cultivators coming here. But what was different from the past was that a voice sounded in Lin Sun's ears while he was meditating. "I'm Lu Zong. I'm here to pay a visit to you by the order of my master." Lin Sun's expression remained unchanged, but his divine awareness spread out. He immediately saw a handsome young man in gray standing in the crowd in the distance. The young man's eyebrows were full of heroic spirit, and he carried an ancient sword on his back. "Who's your master?" Lin Sun asked. "My master is an old friend of Senior Tai Xian. His name is Wuyang." Lu Zong replied. "Wuyang." Lin Sun was shocked, and an indescribable surprise surged in his heart. How could he forget that it was Battle Emperor Wuyang who gave him the inheritance of no return in the absolute summit domain? How could he forget that the wisp of willpower of Battle Emperor Wuyang once called him a kindred spirit? However, as time passed, Battle Emperor Wuyang at that time might have already been like Tai Xian, and could no longer be called a Battle Emperor. It turns out that you're an outstanding disciple of Senior Wuyang. But where is Senior Wuyang now? Lin Sun suppressed his excitement and asked. "My master didn't come to the divine city of fate, but she has already known what happened to you." Lu Zong said. "My master said that the divine city of fate is now surrounded by the eternal realm of various divine clans, so you shouldn't be in a hurry to leave." In addition, she also said that she has made contact with some old friends. When the opportunity arises, they will help you leave the Star of Fate together. Lin Sun's heart was filled with indescribable warmth and emotion. With so many divine clans besieging the city, it would be impossible for anyone else to take such a huge risk to help him. But Senior Wuyang did so. Maybe it was because of Senior Tai Xian. Perhaps there were other reasons for this. But no matter what, Lin Sun only felt grateful. It was also at this time that he understood what the turning point Tai Xian had mentioned was. Thank your master for me. Just say that I will never forget such a great favor. Lin Sun's voice was solemn. Lu Zong said, You're welcome. My master said that you and she both came from the ancient Desolation realm. No matter what, she can't just leave you in the lurch. You should also take care of yourself. There are many divine sons in this city, so don't be careless. After saying that, Lu Zong quietly turned around and left. Lin Sun took a deep breath, calmed his heart, and continued to meditate. Before leaving the Star of Fate, he had to figure out one thing. What was it that Xia Ji had been searching for? At the same time, he had to give 13 a clear answer. As for the divine sons in the city, it wasn't that Lin Sun didn't care. It was just that these things couldn't affect him anymore. Before he knew it, another half a month had passed. I can't wait any longer. In a palace in the city, a group of divine sons gathered. There were more than 10 of them. One of them sat on the main seat in the center. He wore an official robe and his black hair was loose. His eyes were as clear as a lake. As he sat there casually, he looked like a king, domineering and intimidating. Pu Yun, a divine son from the Pu clan of the Divine Clan, a peerless genius who ranked 15th in the 100 clans sparring of Dao. Moreover, the Pu clan's foundation and power could also firmly rank in the top 5 among the various god clans. That was why he was able to gather the dozen or so divine princes in the main hall with his name and prestige. If we wait for the divine sons of the 3 divine clans to come, we won't have a chance to take away Lin Sun's creation. Pu Yun's voice was clear, like a morning bell. The world of gods. The divine sons of the 3 divine clans. Everyone in the palace narrowed their eyes. They naturally knew the meaning behind Pu Yun's words. Brother Pu, there are at least 60 divine sons and divine daughters in the city now, excluding us. If we make a move now, we'll definitely become the target of public criticism. I'm afraid others will take the opportunity to rob us. Someone said with a frown. During this period of time, everyone has been lying low in the city. No one dared to be the first to make a move. They're not afraid of Lin Sun, but the potential competitors, another person said. But this way, everyone will be restraining each other. This isn't a solution after all. Moreover, if the forces of the 3 divine clans from the world of gods come, which divine clan in the city would dare to rob them? These words made everyone hesitate. I agree with Pu Yun's decision. A moment later, someone said with a resolute expression, Count me in. If that's the case, I'll accompany Brother Pu. Count me in as well. Immediately, many people agreed. Seeing this, Pu Yun immediately stood up and said, Everyone, if we can seize the fortune this time, I swear in the name of the clan that I won't forget your help. Let's go. After saying this, he strode out of the palace. The others followed closely behind. As soon as they walked out of the palace, they rushed at full speed toward the Fortune Star Dome. It wasn't that they didn't want to conceal their aura, but now, the Fortune Divine City was full of people watching them. They could learn the movements of their competitors at the first instance, and those competitors could also learn their movements at the first instance. All this meant that it was futile to hide. Their top priority was to kill their way to the Fortune Star Dome as fast as possible and capture and kill Lin Sun in one fell swoop before their competitors could react. However, what Pu Yun and the other divine sons didn't expect was that when they arrived at the Fortune Star Dome's area, they saw a group of people rushing toward the Fortune Star Dome at full speed from another direction. Moreover, they were one step ahead of them. The other party was also a group of divine sons, but the scale was even larger than theirs. There were nearly 20 of them, and they were led by a handsome young man in azure divine armor. Pu Yun couldn't help but frown when he saw this person. Gongye Hui, the divine son of the Gongye clan, was a strong opponent that even Pu Yun had to take seriously. A long time ago, Gongye Hui was ranked 12th in the ancestor realm, 3 places higher than him. As I expected, Pu Yun, you've gathered these friends today with the intention of launching a surprise attack to kill Lin Sun. Fortunately, I've already led my friends to act together when I figured out your intentions. Otherwise, you might really have gotten ahead of me. Gongye Hui also saw Pu Yun and couldn't help but laugh heartily. Chapter 29:01. Gongye Hui laughed in an unbridled manner. All the divine sons around him were laughing as well. Pu Yun and the others had ugly expressions on their faces. They'd intended to be the first, but who would have thought that they wouldn't be able to get what they wanted in the end? So, Brother Gongye intends to compete with us? Pu Yun said coldly. Why not? Gongye Hui asked. The atmosphere instantly became oppressive and tense. This was the area where the fortune star was located. Many cultivators nearby had noticed the appearance of these two groups. Besides feeling terrified, they couldn't help but have the same thought. This storm that had been brewing for a long time was about to be unleashed today. Swish. Subconsciously, everyone retreated from this area in unison. They were afraid that they would be affected if a great battle were to break out. What made everyone speechless was that Lin Sun was still sitting cross-legged on the ground and didn't react in the slightest. Pu Yun and Gongye Hui had brought a total of 30 God Sun grade experts. The scale of their forces was so grand that it could make anyone in the Fortune Divine City despair. Even some divine sons would probably be restless in the face of such a situation. But Lin Sun, he was really too calm. Interesting. Not to mention anything else, but in terms of courage, this fellow is absolutely one of the best. Gongye Hui chuckled. As he spoke, he'd already brought everyone closer to the area of the fortune star. When two tigers fight, there's bound to be a loss. Perhaps he's noticed that no matter who wants to kill him, a conflict is unavoidable. Perhaps he'll even be able to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight before reaping the benefits. As Pu Yun spoke, he'd already brought everyone closer and didn't give way at all. For a time, a confrontation had formed between their group and Gongye Hui's group, and it was confrontational and confrontational. It seemed as if no one intended to give up their prey willingly. But right at this moment, a leisurely laughter resounded through the heavens and the earth. Fortunately, we're not too late. Pu Yun, Gongye Hui, and the other two groups frowned. Someone's coming again. At this moment, everyone in the distance was in an uproar. In the distance, a group of peerlessly dazzling flying lights tore through the sky and arrived in this area in an instant, revealing numerous figures with terrifying auras. There were more than 20 of them. The one in the lead was an extremely dazzling and beautiful woman. She wore silver armor, and her black hair was coiled into a bun. Her eyebrows were exquisite, and she was as beautiful as a painting. Her slender figure was graceful, and the scarlet cloak behind her flapped in the wind. Wenren Ruoxue. Goddess Wenren was a peerless monster who was ranked 9th in the 100 races sparring of the Tao. Pu Yun, Gongye Hui, and the others frowned when they saw her leading a group of divine princes over. This woman was terrifying. At this moment, the atmosphere was extremely somber. In addition to Wenren Ruoxue's group, there were already more than 50 divine sons present. This was equivalent to more than half of the god princes of the various god races in the creation divine ruins being present. Since ancient times, when had there been such a scene in the Fortune Divine City? Miss Ruoxue, I didn't expect you to come as well. Gongye Hui let out a long sigh. I really don't want to be enemies with you. We can't be considered to be enemies, we can only be called opponent. We're only fighting for a fortune, and we can just go our separate ways when the outcome is decided. Wenren Ruoshua's voice was leisurely, her bearing was valiant, and her silver armor added a heroic aura to her. That's the only way. Gongye Hui's smile became calm. As a divine prince, his mental state wouldn't be affected by this. This person possesses a heaven-defying combat strength. Liang Qiuyan and the others were killed by him. Do all of you think we should swarm over and seize it by ourselves, or should we make other arrangements? Pu Yun spoke in a low voice. The three groups of forces were opposing each other with equal harshness, yet no one paid any attention to Lin Sun. It seemed as if they'd already taken Lin Sun to be at their mercy. This scene caused the hearts of everyone to tremble, and they only had a single thought in their minds. This time, Lin Sun was completely finished. Over 50 divine princes had appeared, and there was no lack of monsters that were even more terrifying than Liang Qiuyan. No matter what method they used, there was no suspense in hunting and killing Lin Sun. Swarming over is bound to cause a chaotic battle. I'm afraid no one wants to see casualties. In my opinion, why don't we draw lots to decide the order? Gongye Hui pondered for a moment before he suggested. How do we draw lots? Asked Wenren Ruoshua. Obviously, she'd realized that if a chaotic battle broke out under such circumstances, then they might be able to capture Lin Sun in the end, but they were bound to pay a price of casualties. This was something none of them were willing to see happen. After all, as divine princes, they didn't want to risk their lives in this matter. Therefore, drawing lots was not a bad choice. Even though Pu Yun didn't speak, he obviously tacitly approved of this method. But right at this moment, there's no need to draw lots. Let's go together. Along with this voice, Lin Sun, who'd been sitting there without moving, had stood up, and he looked over with an indifferent expression. Let's go together? Everyone was startled and had strange expressions on their faces. Pu Yun, Gongye Hui, Wenren Ruoshua, and the others were stunned as well, and they seemed to be in slight disbelief. They glanced at each other and couldn't help but have a strange feeling in their hearts. This fellow's arrogance had exceeded their expectations time and time again. It was at such a time and under such circumstances that even the boldest person would probably restrain himself. But Lin Sun, no. I really want to know who gave you the courage? Gongye Hui couldn't help asking. Lin Sun thought for a while and said seriously, Aren't you here to die? No matter what method you adopt, death is inevitable in the end. Why go through so much trouble? Gongye Hui raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, Listen, is this what a dying prey should say? It's simply insane. In my opinion, I'm afraid he knows that a battle is inevitable. If we go together, we'll definitely restrain each other and fall into a chaotic battle, which is extremely advantageous to him. From this point of view, he seems arrogant, but he's actually not stupid. He knows how to seize the opportunity. Pu Yun analyzed calmly. Many people agreed with this view. No matter how arrogant Lin Sun was, such a heaven-defying character, it was impossible for him to be a stupid person. At this moment, he provoked them and tried to make them fight together. Obviously, he had realized that in order to capture him, the three forces would have to restrain and fight against each other. This was beneficial for him to fish in troubled waters. If this is your plan, then you've made a big mistake, Wenren Ruoshua said. Wenren Ruoshua said, We can completely put aside our guard and confrontation. After we capture you, we can discuss who will take you away. This is a good idea. Gongye Hui nodded. All right. Pu Yun also agreed. For a moment, all eyes and spears were pointed at Lin Sun. This made the spectators in the distance sweat for Lin Sun. But Lin Sun smiled at this moment and said, It should have been like this long ago. After a pause, he looked at the crowd in the distance. Does anyone else want to go together? I can give you a chance to die together. The whole audience was silent. Everyone was confused. This wasn't enough? Gongye Hui, who had long disliked Lin Sun, couldn't help shouting, Go, cripple him! Boom! Gongye Hui's azure armor glowed, and he took the lead to rush out with a silver trident in his hand. Seeing Gongye Hui take action, Pu Yun and Wenren Ruoxue, who had been waiting for a long time, couldn't neglect. Almost at the first moment they also attacked together. Swish! In Wenren Ruoxue's hand, a long black shuttle spun. Light and shadow flowed, and it shot out hundreds of millions of sharp lights, tearing the void. Clang! Pu Yun took out a pagoda surging with thunder and lightning, covering Lin Sun's head. In addition, a group of divine sons led by the three of them also attacked at this moment. More than 50 divine sons, each of them was a legend of an era, and they had a heaven-defying combat power that was invincible in the same realm. Now that they attacked together, how terrifying would that scene be? Then, heaven and earth shook. An unparalleled torrent of power covered the sky and the earth, shining with all kinds of colorful lights. Numerous Taoist arts and treasures filled it, all rushing towards Lin Sun. That kind of destructive aura made the cultivators in the nearby area feel like their liver was going to explode, and they fled in panic. It was too terrifying. Facing the enemies who rushed over to kill him, Lin Sun smiled, as if he was watching a group of prey coming to him voluntarily. Swish! At this moment, a huge space-time crack emerged behind Lin Sun, turning into a vortex gate thousands of meters high. The door of exile. Looking from afar, it seemed like a bloody mouth had suddenly opened between heaven and earth. And in front of this bloody mouth, those divine sons rushed over like a shoal of fish. Boom! Then, the terrifying torrent of power that could destroy heaven and earth was swallowed up by the vortex gate. Those divine sons who rushed forward in an attempt to kill Lin Sun at the first possible moment didn't have time to dodge, and they were directly drawn into the gate that seemed to lead to the depths of hell. Oh no! Retreat quickly! Watch out! Go! All kinds of screams resounded. Pu Yun, Gongye Hui, Wenren Ruoxue, and the others sensed danger at the first possible moment, and they subconsciously wanted to retreat. But how could Lin Sun let them do as they wished? Boom! The door of exile spread out, releasing a terrifying and boundless space-time devouring power, causing the nearby void to collapse and distort. It seemed as if it was going to swallow the sky in one gulp. The spectators in the extreme distance let out shrill cries of terror as they felt a lethal threat. It was like the end of the world had arrived, and it stimulated them to the point of fleeing in panic. It seemed as if they would suffer a calamity if they stayed a moment longer. On the other hand, the figures of those divine sons in this area were dragged uncontrollably into the door of exile, and they vanished in the blink of an eye like numerous black dots. Only their shrill, terrified, furious, and unwilling shouts reverberated and resounded. Most of them had stepped foot onto the path of immortality, and they had an extremely bright future ahead of them. It was even to the extent that they would inherit the authority of their clans in the future and control the authority of an era. They were divine sons, the blood and sweat of their clans, and they were monstrous geniuses that were invincible in the same realm. Yet now they seemed to be in an extremely terrible state. All of them were panicking like a group of ants in a chaotic storm, and their lives were no longer in their control as they were ceaselessly exiled and vanished. Chapter 2902. This shocking and bizarre scene merely lasted for 3 breaths of time before it vanished. The door of exile had vanished. The heavens and the earth had recovered their tranquility. However, only Wenren Ruoxue, Pu Yun, Gongye Hui, and a few others remained. All of them had disheveled hair, disheveled clothes, and were gasping for breath. Unconcealable shock appeared on their faces, and they'd lost control of their minds. On the other hand, the other divine sons who'd come with them earlier had vanished without a trace. They'd been swallowed by the door of exile. This terrifying scene caused Wenren Ruoxue and the others to tremble all over. Extremely far away, it was a scene of disorder. Many cultivators who'd fled earlier stood extremely far away, and all of them had panicked expressions and lingering fear in their hearts. The scene from before was simply like a nightmare, and it gave them an extremely great impact on their mind. No one had expected that Lin Sun would release such a forbidden and terrifying divine ability as soon as the battle had begun, and he'd practically annihilated all 50 divine sons in one fell swoop. Earlier, everyone felt pity for Lin Sun and thought that he'd surely die this time. It all depended on who killed him. But now, or in 3 breaths of time, Lin Sun had turned the situation around. "Let's go." Pu Yun teleported and intended to flee at the first possible moment. As if they had a tacit understanding, Wenren Ruoxue, Gongye Hui, and the remaining divine sons all chose to retreat at the same time. The strength Lin Sun revealed earlier had completely shattered the confidence and fighting spirit in their hearts, and it caused them to suffer a great impact and feel terror and coldness. Now that they'd escaped calamity with great difficulty, how could they possibly dare to stay? Lin Sun shook his head and sighed lightly. "Since I've come to accept my death, how could I possibly let all of you leave?" He executed the divine ability passing time. After that, Pu Yun and the others who just started fleeing were like insects stuck in a spider's web, and their figures stopped in the sky for an instant. It was also at this instant that countless strands of sword chi enveloped over like a waterfall. Poo! 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 A wave of muffled sounds resounded, and the bodies of Pu Yun, Wenren Ruoxue, Gongye Hui, and the other remaining divine sons were slashed into pieces and perished on the spot. The scarlet color of blood painted the sky with a layer of shocking red. In the blink of an eye, the group of enemies was annihilated. Under the star of fate, Lin Sun was the only one left. His lonely figure was like an unparalleled god, looking at the world indifferently. Was the enemy not strong enough? No, it could only be said that the mysteries of time were too taboo. The most lethal part was that he could only utilize his Emperor Realm cultivation in Divine Fortune City. If they were in the outside world, then Lin Sun would probably have to expend a great deal of effort to kill them if he allowed them to recover their eternal Tao cultivation. But then again, if they were in the outside world, Lin Sun wouldn't be afraid of these opponents with his immortal supreme strength. How terrifying! Far in the distance, many people who saw this scene were in a daze. That's the power of time and space. It's unstoppable in the Emperor Realm. Someone was trembling. Who in Fortune Divine City can be Lin Sun's opponent with such a forbidden divine ability? No wonder he was so fearless before. Many people were excited and realized why Lin Sun was so calm and fearless before. He wasn't arrogant, but full of confidence. The rumor is true. There is indeed a forbidden divine ability related to time hidden in the eternal coffin. But who would have thought that such power would be so terrible? People looked at Lin Sun with fear and awe. It was said that the eternal coffin contained the 3 forbidden powers of cause and effect, fate and time. Whoever obtained it could become the master of fate and make all races submit to him. There was no doubt that Lin Sun had obtained the eternal coffin and comprehended and controlled the forbidden power related to time from it, so that he could exert the terrifying power just now. "I only hope that someone dares to come and die under the star of fate," Lin Sun sighed softly. As soon as he said this, the hearts of the people in the distance rolled. How could they not understand the meaning of Lin Sun's words? He was obviously sure that after today's battle spread out, no one would dare to make trouble for him anymore. But it was obvious from Lin Sun's tone that he wanted to continue. As before, Lin Sun sat cross-legged on the ground and began to meditate. The onlookers just recovered from the shock and hurried away. On the same day, the news came out and the whole city was shocked. Fortunately, we were a step late when we heard the news. Otherwise, I'm afraid we won't be able to come back. There were still some divine sons in the city. When they learned that Pu Yun, Gongye Hui, Wenren Ruoxue and the others were all annihilated, they all gasped and then rejoiced. Outside the city, "Old ancestor, young master, he died." The first to rush out of the city to report the news was a powerhouse of the Wenren clan. He knelt on the ground and cried in fear. In the depths of the starry sky, an angry voice resounded. How could this be? In the depths of the starry sky in all directions there were many big shots at the eternal realm. Seeing this scene, many people gloated. But it didn't take long for the starry sky to explode. All kinds of angry voices rang out. All of them were flustered and exasperated, unable to calm down. Because as the news came out, they realized that so many divine sons had died this time, and almost all of them were related to them. This time, no one had the mood to gloat or laugh at others. All of them were replaced by angry voices. "This damned bastard! One day, I'll burn his bones and scatter his ashes." The power of time, one of the most powerful forbidden supernatural powers of the eternal night divine emperor. If she hadn't suffered a great disaster, I'm afraid the entire ruins of fate would have surrendered to her. No matter what, we can't let Lin Sun leave alive. In the starry sky, old monsters from various divine clans roared, shaking the stars in the sky and making countless cultivators in the divine city of fate tremble. There was a commotion inside and outside the city. But none of this affected Lin Sun. He was comprehending the hundreds of cultivation systems and waiting for the turning point to come. But from that day on, no one came to make trouble for a long time. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, time flew and 5 years had passed. No one expected that Lin Sun would be so patient. He seemed to be obsessed with meditating under the star of fate. He sat cross-legged day and night. Occasionally, he would get up and wander around the city, but he would soon return and continue meditating. Gradually, the cultivators in the city got used to Lin Sun's existence. Over the past 5 years, the divine city of fate had been peaceful, no more turbulent or bloody incidents. It was said that 5 years ago, the godchildren from the 3 great god clans of the Pantheon world had arrived at the divine fortune city. But when they learned of Lin Sun's achievements, they chose to lay low. They hadn't made a single move in the past 5 years. Outside the divine city of fate, in the depths of the starry sky, the old monsters from various divine clans hadn't given up either. They had been waiting there for 5 years. For mortals, 5 years was a long time. However, it was only 5 years in the opinion of cultivators, and it was nothing at all. Especially for cultivators above the Emperor realm, the time they spent in seclusion could be counted in hundreds of years. But when people thought of how those old monsters were willing to wait for the same goal for 5 years, they couldn't help but be shocked. This undoubtedly meant that those old monsters were determined to take down Lin Sun. One person could be stung. He could hide for a while, but how could he hide forever? Everyone had something they had to do, whether it was for cultivation, for friends and family, for revenge, or for other things. All of this meant that Lin Sun couldn't hide in the divine city of fate forever. 5 years passed. There was no more slaughter or turbulence, and the divine city of fate returned to its former bustle and prosperity. But every time people passed by the divine city of fate and saw Lin Sun sitting cross-legged there, they would realize that Lin Sun's existence was bound to cause more turbulence in the divine city of fate in the future. It's been 5 years. On this day, Lin Sun quietly opened his eyes, and a trace of absent-mindedness flashed through them. It had been more than 5 years since he left the eternal world. Before coming here, he had 2 goals. One was to rescue his parents from the flowing light-restricted area. The other was to unravel the mystery of Xia Zhi's origins. Now, the first goal had been accomplished, but the second goal was still puzzling. He only knew that Xia Zhi's true body was once called the Eternal Night Divine Emperor, and that she had suffered a great calamity. The old monsters from the era of the gods had taken advantage of her misfortune to rob her. However, her origins and background were still a mystery. Apart from that, Lin Sun still faced 2 problems. One was how to leave the divine city of fate. The other was to unravel the final mystery hidden in the divine city of fate. As for the first problem, Lin Sun could only wait for the turning point that Tai Xian spoke of. Fortunately, he was as patient as the old monsters deep in the starry sky outside the city, and he was not in a hurry to leave. As for the second problem, Over the past 5 years, besides using one Tao body to protect and guard against the movements of the outside world, Lin Sun's true body and the other 4 clones had been comprehending and comprehending. Up to now, he had grasped over 100 cultivation systems, but what he had grasped was not complete. Because his cultivation was only at the great perfection of the heavenly longevity realm, and the mysteries of the realms after that were not something he could touch. But even so, the benefits he obtained from comprehending were so great that it could even be described as immeasurable. Lin Sun was sure that if his cultivation hadn't been suppressed in the divine city of fate, his cultivation would have been able to reach the nirvana realm and achieve a new breakthrough. The only thing that made Lin Sun frown was that up until now, he still hadn't comprehended the final mystery hidden in the divine city of fate. He didn't even have a clue. In the past 5 years, he had tried to deduce more than once in an attempt to figure out some mysteries from the scattered stars in the starry sky, but he had failed every time. No wonder no one has been able to decipher its mysteries for countless years. It's really too difficult. Lin Sun couldn't help but let out a long sigh. He simply withdrew his divine sense and lay on the black ground with his arms as a pillow. He looked straight at the sky and didn't think or do anything. He just purely admired the mysterious starry sky. Tens of thousands of stars were motionless like a tranquil and profound painting. If he didn't sense it, he wouldn't be able to feel the aura of the great Tao lingering around every star, and he wouldn't be able to pry into the mysteries of the completely different cultivation systems. But gradually, gazing at the stars, a mysterious pattern of divine talisman inexplicably emerged in Lin Sun's mind. It was the infinite divine talisman formed by 9 divine talismans. It was like a starry sky that was constantly changing, and the runes' trajectories were constantly changing, revealing boundless and profound secrets. The infinite divine talisman came from the infinite book, and the infinite book was the supreme inheritance of Master Lu's sect. But now, this mystery of inheritance emerged in Lin Sun's mind inadvertently. It was like a flash of inspiration and a flash of lightning, which shocked Lin Sun. Could it be? P.S. I've been updating for 5 days in a row. I can't stand it anymore. Take a rest tonight. End of this chapter. For the fastest and error-free reading, please visit Com on mobile. Chapter 2903. Lin Sun closed his eyes quietly. He began to deduce the hundreds of cultivation systems in the starry sky with the power of Taoist markings. Every cultivation system was the crystallization of the wisdom of a cultivation civilization, but in the final analysis, they were derived from the rules of heaven and earth. At this time, in Lin Sun's mind, different cultivation systems were like different Taoist markings, and the mysteries contained in each realm outlined the path of the great way of the markings. In short, what Lin Sun was doing now was to copy different cultivation systems with Taoist markings, and then deduce them with the power of Taoist markings. Hundreds of cultivation systems, each different, could be fused into Taoist markings, so that these hundreds of cultivation systems could form a connection with Taoist markings as a medium. This was like stringing hundreds of scattered pearls together with a string to form a whole. The ultimate goal was to include all the cultivation systems of hundreds of eras in one system. Lin Sun couldn't help being shocked when he realized this before, and he vaguely understood the purpose of the Supreme Figure who created the Star of Creation. If he could really achieve this, it was equivalent to mastering the power above the cultivation systems of hundreds of eras. Therefore, when Lin Sun looked at the starry sky again, he finally understood that in the eyes of the Supreme Figure, the cultivation systems of hundreds of eras were stars. As for the starry sky, it could completely encompass them. Creating such a dome of stars was the ultimate goal of that Supreme Being. When Lin Sun comprehended this and deduced the cultivation systems of hundreds of eras, his state of mind couldn't be compared to before. Another year passed. Lin Sun, who was meditating in silence, suddenly opened his eyes and looked up at the sky. At the same time, fist-sized Taoist markings appeared in front of him. Each Taoist markings was shining brightly and emitted a completely different aura of the Great Way. In the nearby area, many practitioners noticed this scene and couldn't help but be surprised. What was Lin Sun going to do? For 6 years, Lin Sun had been meditating here, paying no attention to the affairs of the world and dispute. This was the first time in 6 years that people had seen him make such a move. Soon, hundreds of Taoist patterns emerged around Lin Sun's body. They were all crystal clear and radiated a completely different aura of the Great Way. After that, over 100 talisman diagrams swiftly transformed into flowing lights that charged into the tranquil expanse of the starry sky. They were like over 100 torches that lit up all the stars in the starry sky, causing them to seem as if they were burning and glowing brilliantly. The world suddenly brightened, and everyone felt a stabbing pain in their eyes. Then they were shocked. Has Lin Sun comprehended the ultimate mystery of Star of Fate? Heavens! An uproar resounded. At this moment, star sky of creation seemed to be boiling and burning in everyone's field of vision. Every single star was dazzling and blazing, and they poured down boundless brilliant light. What happened? At this moment, the myriad of cultivators in every single area and corner of Divine Creation City had stopped what they were doing and looked up into the sky. Starlight shone brilliantly, burning the heavens. The unbelievable scene caused a complete uproar in the city. It's from the Fortune Star Dome. Quick, let's go take a look. Many people shouted and rushed towards the region where the Fortune Star Dome was located. All of them were extremely excited. In the countless years since ancient times, Fortune Star Dome had always been a mystery that no one had been able to solve. No one knew how many great figures of the Shen clan had come and spent a great deal of time and effort to figure it out, but to no avail. So far, all the cultivators in the world thought that the ultimate mystery of Fortune Star Dome didn't exist at all. But now, such a heaven and earth anomaly had occurred in the city. Did this mean that the mystery that no one had been able to solve since ancient times had been solved? When many cultivators arrived at the area where the Fortune Star Dome was located, they saw a vast expanse of white that was like burning starlight raining down and completely drowning a figure within it. It's him, Lin Sun. How is it possible? Did he really figure out the ultimate mystery of Fortune Star Dome? Doesn't this mean that he will obtain a supreme treasure left by that supreme figure? More and more cultivators rushed to this place, and when they realized that it was Lin Sun who had caused such a heaven and earth anomaly, they couldn't calm down. It seemed that no one had expected that Lin Sun would figure out the ultimate mystery of Fortune Star Dome in just 6 years. This was incredible, and some people who hated Lin Sun were even more envious. Lin Sun was unable to sense all of this any longer. After he deduced over 100 cultivation systems in the form of Dao markings, he'd found the key to unraveling the ultimate mystery. After that, he utilized his own Dao as a guide to transform over 100 cultivation systems into over 100 Dao marking talismans, and they instantly resonated with the over 100 stars in the Fortune Star Dome and caused such a heaven and earth anomaly. At this moment, Lin Sun saw a tall, handsome, and mighty figure in a daze while he was suffused by the boundless expanse of starlight that seemed like burning starlight. This figure wore green clothes, carried an ancient sword on his back, and walked through the annals of time. He seemed to be searching for something. Every time he passed a civilization of an era, a grand and mysterious talisman diagram would appear behind him, and it fully deduced the cultivation system that belonged to the civilization of that era down to the slightest detail. Shockingly, that talisman diagram was the infinite divine talisman. The green-clothed figure seemed as if he was fearless of the restraints and impacts of time and space, and he was like a god that walked through different eras. His extraordinary bearing caused Lin Sun to be unable to help but be shocked. Time and space couldn't obstruct him, and an era couldn't trap him. What sort of realm was this? After a long time, the green-clothed figure appeared in an area that seemed like chaos. After that, a great tribulation descended abruptly. This tribulation was shapeless, colorless, and immaterial. It was born from nothingness. Even though Lin Sun was unable to see it, he was able to sense the aura of true despair and death. It seemed as if the laws of the grand Tao, time, and destiny would be completely wiped out by this tribulation. An indescribable feeling of suffocation assaulted Lin Sun's state of mind like a tsunami, and it caused him to feel as if he was about to collapse. Right at this moment, the green-clothed figure sighed. As expected, there's a mastermind behind all of this. As he sighed, the glow of the Tao surged into appearance before him, and then it suddenly swept out. Bang! Lin Sun's vision was covered in a boundless expanse of whiteness. After that, another mysterious scene appeared. That green-clothed figure established a city in the chaos, and it was extremely vast and vast. Shockingly, it was the embryonic form of the Fortune Divine City. After that, he flicked his sleeve, and then an expanse of stars instantly appeared within the city. All sorts of cultivation systems that were born from the civilizations of different eras transformed into numerous stars that were embedded in the starry sky. Clang! In the end, the green-clothed man withdrew a completely round black tortoise shell and tossed it lightly. It instantly transformed into a shapeless energy of the laws of order that enveloped the sky above the Fortune Divine City. In this way, the quintessence of creation won't be destroyed, the green-clothed man muttered. He seemed to have thought of something, and he turned around. At that instant, Lin Sun felt the green-clothed man's gaze traverse the boundless space and time to look at him from afar, and it caused Lin Sun's heart to shake. In the future, if someone is able to see through my arrangements here, then perhaps it would mean that I'm not the only one in this world. The green-clothed man's voice was still reverberating through the air when the scene before Lin Sun's eyes instantly vanished like a bubble. When he raised his head to look once more, the starry sky was tranquil, the stars were clear, and the phenomena from before had completely vanished. But right at this moment, a picture surged into Lin Sun's heart. A complete picture of the Fortune Divine City. Every area, every building, every corner, and even every single movement of the myriad of living beings that resided within the city was revealed down to the slightest detail in this picture. He didn't even need to look to know what was happening in any part of the city. A wave of enlightenment surged into Lin Sun's heart. He had become the master of the Fortune Divine City. As long as he thought about it, he could change any place in the city. Similarly, he could also control the mysterious taboo force covering the city and kill the myriad of living beings in the city. This, Lin Sun was shocked at once. Could it be that the Fortune Divine City was the treasure left by the Supreme Figure after he had seen through the ultimate mystery? This was completely beyond Lin Sun's expectation. Who could imagine that the Fortune Divine City, known as the first city in the ruins of creation and known as God Doesn't Care, was actually a treasure? This was incredible. The green-clothed man must be the Supreme Figure. But he called himself Qin. Could he be Senior Qin Lincom or an elder of his clan? Countless doubts surged in Lin Sun's heart. Before Lin Sun could figure it out, a noisy uproar broke out. Lin Sun raised his eyes and looked around. He saw that countless cultivators in the nearby area were looking at him. Everyone's face was filled with shock, envy, and disbelief. Undoubtedly, the scenes that had happened before had been witnessed by everyone present. Senior Lin, may I ask if you have seen through the ultimate mystery of this place? A cultivator summoned up his courage and asked in a trembling voice. Lin Sun said casually, "I'm afraid you wouldn't believe me if I said no." He was still shocked in his heart as he recalled the scenes he had seen before. Could the answer that Xia Ji was painstakingly looking for be everything that the Supreme Figure surnamed Chen had done in the ruins of creation? That's right. That Supreme Figure with the surname Chen had also encountered an extremely terrifying and bizarre calamity, but he didn't suffer any mishaps and was completely unharmed. Moreover, after he had gone through the tribulation, he had built the fortune divine city here and completely enveloped the city with the power of the rules of heaven and earth transformed from the black tortoiseshell treasure. The purpose of doing this was to avoid the occurrence of the situation of the source of creation being destroyed. Did this mean that the place where the fortune divine city was located was the origin of the ruins of creation? While Lin Sun was thinking about it, his answer caused a complete uproar in the field. It's true. I didn't expect that this eternal mystery would be solved today. I just don't know what the treasure left by the Supreme Figure is. The noise was like a frying pan, rolling between heaven and earth. At this moment, Lin Sun, who had cracked the ultimate mystery of the star of creation, undoubtedly became the most eye-catching person present. P.S. I'm seriously stuck. I've deleted a lot of useless manuscripts, so I'm very irritable and upset. I owe you one chapter today. I'll write it tomorrow. Sorry, everyone. Chapter 2904. Everyone had different expressions. Some were envious, some were jealous, and some were shocked. It had been 6 years. Lin Sun, who was hated by all the Protoss, was not only alive and well, but had also unraveled the greatest mystery of the star of creation and triggered a natural phenomenon. How much did he benefit from it? Had the supreme treasure left behind by that supreme figure already fallen into his hands? Everyone's hearts were in turmoil. Lin Sun ignored all this. He had many doubts in his mind and needed to think about them calmly. The next moment, he disappeared into thin air. Humph, no matter how much he benefits, he's just a trapped beast. Someone snorted coldly. It was very ear-piercing near the star of creation. Many people were surprised. Very few people dared to openly slander Lin Sun in the city, lest they suffer Lin Sun's revenge. When people saw the appearance of the person who snorted, they seemed to understand. It was a white-haired man in a black robe. He was thin and tall, with skin as fair as jade. There was a mysterious water-shaped totem brand between his eyebrows. Jiang Linqiu, a divine son of the Jiang clan of the world of gods. In the entire divine ruins of creation, the Jiang clan was a well-deserved hegemon. Its power was firmly in the top 3 among the Protoss, and Jiang Linqiu was a monster among monsters. His foundation was abnormally terrifying. In the 100 Races discussion a long time ago, he ranked 4th among his peers. Such a character with a peerless background and foundation naturally had the confidence to say so. But people didn't dare to agree. This was the divine city of creation after all. 6 years ago, Lin Sun had proved his terror with a bloody and brilliant battle record. And Lin Sun wasn't afraid of the threat of the Protoss. Under such circumstances, no one could be sure that Jiang Linqiu could defeat Lin Sun. It's useless to talk about this. The most important thing is when he leaves. Our top priority is to defend the 4 city gates and not give him any chance to escape. A voice that was as gentle as water rang out. The one who spoke was a woman in a green dress. She had bright eyes and white teeth. To play with? Square root? / PG Shao. A goddess from the primordial Protoss G clan of the era of gods. 3rd in the 100 Races discussion. He had the divine blood of Archean talent. A long time ago, she had stepped onto the path of the eternal Tao. She was the number 1 goddess of the gods' era and even the various god clans. The eyes of everyone in the surroundings opened wide when they saw Ji Shao make an appearance as well, and they revealed fervent and respectful expressions. There are countless seniors standing guard outside the city. If he escapes the city gates, he'll definitely be noticed at the first possible moment. What I'm concerned about right now is exactly how many years he'll be holed up in the city. Jiang Linqiu frowned. Soon. An indifferent voice resounded from extremely far away. Many seniors have already deduced that an unprecedented and shocking change will occur in Divine Fortune City in the near future. Even though they don't know what the shocking change is, they can infer that it's definitely related to Lin Sun. The voice was ethereal, and no one knew where it came from. However, both Jiang Linqiu and Ji Shao narrowed their eyes. Only they knew that the owner of this voice was from the High Sun clan of the God race, and he was an extremely unfathomable freak. Even numerous seniors of the God race evaluated him as someone who reigned supreme in the universe. This person was Gao Yangju. He was a legend from the High Sun clan of the God race who had single-handedly dominated the path of the Overlord realm and suppressed the other divine sons and goddesses. Thank you for the reminder, brother Gao Yangjue. The proud Jiang Linqiu also cupped his fists and thanked him at this moment. However, Gao Yangjue's voice never appeared again. Soon, Jiang Linqiu and Ji Shao also left one after another. However, the area around Star Dome of Fortune was no longer calm. There's going to be a shocking change in the near future? What does that mean? Is Lin Sun planning to leave Divine Fortune City? Impossible. He's courting death if he goes out. It's said that the number of Eternal Realm experts guarding the city in all directions has reached nearly 30 in the past 6 years. Among the hundreds of god clans, only about 30% of them have Eternal Realm experts. But now, so many Eternal Realm experts have been dispatched. This is too scary. On this day, after 6 years, Divine Fortune City once again stirred up a great uproar. On one hand, it was because Lin Sun had unraveled the ultimate mystery of Star Dome of Fortune, an unprecedented feat that aroused countless heated discussions. On the other hand, there was a piece of news. In the near future, there would be a shocking change in Divine Fortune City. As for when this shocking change would happen and what kind of scene it would present, no one knew. Because of this, people were worried. The unknown was the most terrifying. Once some kind of shocking change broke out, it was very likely to implicate the cultivators in the city. As the saying went, when the city gate was on fire, the fish in the moat would be affected. While the city was in an uproar, Lin Sun had returned to Longyue Lake. It had been 6 years. Although Lin Sun was not here, no one dared to occupy this place that originally belonged to the Liangqiu clan of the God race. This was a reputation earned by killing, and it shocked the entire city. That supreme figure surnamed Shen once encountered a great tribulation and survived. This may be the answer why Xia Ji came to Divine Fortune City that year. Unfortunately, when he was on the way to Divine Creation City all those years ago, that great tribulation suddenly arrived and stopped Xia Ji's movements. In a pavilion in the middle of the lake, Lin Sun sat cross-legged and pondered alone. After that, I built Divine Fortune City and covered it with the mysterious power of taboo rules in order to prevent the source of creation from being destroyed. Moreover, the person that's able to see through the profundities of the creation star sky will be able to become the master of the divine city of creation. In other words, the divine city of creation itself is a treasure. Thinking of this, Lin Sun realized one thing. The man in green once said that whoever could see through the mystery of star of creation meant that, I'm not the only one on this path. Did this mean that Lin Sun had become a kindred spirit? After pondering for a long time, Lin Sun began to meditate and sense. In the blink of an eye, everything in Divine Fortune City appeared in his mind. It felt as if Divine Fortune City had become a part of his body. As long as he thought about it, he could control the power of the city and do whatever he wanted. Realizing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but come up with a bold idea in his mind. All the major clans had their forces entrenched in the city. If he dealt with them one by one, it was bound to be an extremely complicated matter. Not only would it take a lot of energy and time, but it was also easy for some to slip through the net. But now it was different. This city was under his control. If he wanted them dead, how could they have a chance to live? It was also easy to identify the enemy. He could sense every move and word of every practitioner in every place in the city. In this way, it was extremely easy to accurately capture the identity and location of the enemy. Thinking of this, Lin Sun immediately began to sense. Suddenly, everything that was happening in the entire Divine Fortune City was reflected in Lin Sun's mind like a mighty torrent. In a divine hall in the east of the city, Lin Sun has seen through the mystery of Star of Creation. If the rumor is true, he must have obtained a treasure. It's a pity that our cultivation is suppressed to the Emperor realm in this city. If it wasn't for this, we would have killed him at the first moment. A group of divine sons gathered together and were having a secret discussion. If that's the case, I'm afraid Lin Sun would have been killed many times. It's useless to talk about this, but I'm looking forward to seeing what exactly that upheaval is. It seems that this upheaval is naturally related to Lin Sun. There were men and women among these divine sons from different clans. When talking about Lin Sun, they all gnashed their teeth in hatred. For the past 6 years, Lin Sun had been holed up here, so they could only endure and wait. There was nothing they could do, and their hearts were extremely depressed. And while they were discussing, Lin Sun's figure silently appeared out of thin air. At this moment, the conversation stopped abruptly. All the divine sons present were startled. Then they stood up abruptly, revealing looks of disbelief. How did you get in?" Someone asked with an expression as if he had seen a ghost. This divine hall was covered with layers of restrictive formations. Even with their divine senses, they hadn't detected a trace of energy fluctuation. This was beyond their expectations. "Of course I walked in," Lin Sun said casually. "Everyone, come with me." These divine sons were shocked and bewildered. After looking at each other, they all chose to attack without hesitation. Boom! The first attack was an all-out killing move. The entire hall rumbled and shook. But as Lin Sun's mind moved, a wave of rule power emerged and silently dissolved all the attacks. The next moment, these divine sons were all suppressed to kneel on the ground, unable to struggle at all. This is the rule power of the city. How can you control it? Someone shouted in shock and anger. The others couldn't stay calm either, and their expressions changed completely. No one had been able to resist the rule power of the divine city of fortune since ancient times. Even those with immortal cultivation would be suppressed to the Emperor realm. If those at the eternal realm wanted to break in, they would be repelled and bombarded by the rule power of the city. It could be said to be extremely mysterious and terrifying. But now, Lin Sun had actually controlled the rule power of the city. This completely subverted the understanding of these divine sons. They felt as if they had been struck by lightning and realized that the situation was not good. This is the secret hidden in the Star of Fortune. Lin Sun smiled. His words seemed to make those divine sons understand. They looked at each other, all of them shocked and angry, and their hearts were in turmoil. Could the ultimate mystery of the Star of Fortune be a method to control the rule power of the city? "Lin Sun, do you dare to fight me fair and square?" A young man's face was gloomy. Being forced to kneel on the ground like this made him feel ashamed and angry. "If you have the ability to make those old things outside the city retreat, I will fight you fair and square," Lin Sun said indifferently. "If you can't, you'd better shut up, lest you embarrass yourself." The young man struggled to get up, but it was to no avail. So what if he was a divine son? The rule power of the divine city of fortune wasn't something they could resist at all. Seeing this, Lin Sun didn't delay any longer. He waved his sleeve, and the 7 divine sons who had been suppressed were immediately put away. Then, Lin Sun disappeared into thin air. From beginning to end, the people outside the hall didn't notice anything at all. He was as ethereal as an immortal, unfazed by ghosts and gods. Chapter 2905. Ji Xiao was taking a bath. The waterfall fell into the pond. The mist was dense, and her snow-white and graceful body was looming in the mist. Soaking in the clear and warm spiritual spring, Ji Xiao looked very lazy and relaxed. Her beautiful almond-shaped eyes were slightly narrowed, and her black hair was scattered in the water like seaweed. There was a trace of joy and enjoyment on her beautiful oval face. There was no one around, so Ji Xiao was not afraid to expose her body in the mist. When Lin Sun appeared out of thin air, he saw such a scene and couldn't help being stunned. Ji Xiao seemed to be unaware of it. She gently pulled up her black hair and wiped it, but the corner of her eyes flickered slightly. Whoosh! An unparalleled sword chi chopped at Lin Sun at an incredible speed. Lin Sun didn't move. The sword chi collapsed inch by inch in front of him and was erased silently. Boom! The spring in the pond roared, rolling up countless streams of water and shooting at Lin Sun like hundreds of millions of arrows. Lin Sun still didn't move. But there seemed to be a barrier in front of him, blocking the hundreds of millions of water arrows. The sound of explosions was inaudible. How could it be you? At the same time, Ji Xiao had put on a green dress, and her body was surrounded by Taoist light. Her eyes were like lightning, looking at Lin Sun from a distance. There was a touch of surprise on her beautiful face. This was her dwelling place, and ordinary people couldn't break in at all. But Lin Sun appeared without any warning, which caught her off guard. Good figure. Lin Sun praised with a smile. Ji Xiao's eyes were as clear as snow, and her beautiful face was cold and aloof. Did you see it all? I saw what I should see, and I saw what I shouldn't see by accident. Lin Sun looked very honest. If you think it's blasphemy, I can't help it. You were taking a bath here when I came here. Ji Xiao was stunned. She couldn't imagine how there could be such a shameless person in the world, and how could he say such shameless words. But she was the goddess of a clan, a peerless genius known to the world. Soon, she calmed down and said, "What are you doing here? Do you want to kill me or get something from me?" "I won't kill you for the time being, but you have to go with me now," Lin Sun said. "What if I refuse?" Ji Xiao asked. His bearing was like that of a celestial being, ethereal and extraordinary, yet there was an icy cold and piercingly cold killing intent surging within him. Lin Sun pointed his finger. The corner of Ji Xiao's aquamarine dress was torn open, revealing a section of her dazzling, snow-white thigh. This caused her entire body to tremble, and she said, "The energy of the laws in the city. That's right. Do you plan to continue resisting or come with me?" Lin Sun said. Ji Zhao's jade-like countenance changed. After a while, she said, "I will go with you." Lin Sun smiled and said, "Smart man." Jiang Linxiu was meditating. To Huang Xiaolong, the fortune divine city was akin to a cage. His cultivation was suppressed to the emperor realm. Even if he were to meditate, it would not be beneficial to his cultivation. However, Jiang Linxiu was still meditating. On the path of cultivation, the most important thing was to advance bravely and persevere. No matter how heaven-defying one's natural talent was, or how solid one's foundation was, Jiang Linxiu had never relaxed his expectations for himself. This was also the reason why he was able to step into the Nirvana God realm in less than 500 years. Everyone thought that he relied on his background and talent, but no one knew how much effort he had put in to achieve this. When Lin Sun appeared, he saw such a scene. Jiang Linxiu snapped out of his daze immediately. His first reaction was to attack without any hesitation. Boom! From standing up to punching out, it happened almost in an instant. The power of this punch was so strong that it was almost invincible. Lin Sun waved his sleeve. Bang! Jiang Linxiu was shaken and fell to the ground. His face suddenly changed, and then he fell silent. He seemed to have understood his situation and said, "The biggest mystery of the fortune star is to get the method to use the power of rules in this city?" Lin Sun nodded. "Yes." Jiang Linxiu sighed. "So, in this city, as long as you want, you can kill anyone at will." Lin Sun said, "No, I only deal with enemies." Jiang Linxiu said, "Even so, when you leave this city, you will encounter a great disaster." Lin Sun said, "That's why I captured you. When I leave, I want to see if your life is important to those old guys." Jiang Linxiu was stunned and said, "I see. Far away, the southern heaven gate appeared in sight. Gao Yangjue moved at full speed, exerting his cultivation to the extreme. If nothing went wrong, he could leave from the southern heaven gate after 3 breaths. However, when he appeared at the southern heaven gate, a figure was already waiting there. Lin Sun. This made Gao Yangjue's heart sink. Clang! A flying sword swept out, setting off a touch of obscure cold light, tearing the sky and whistling away. This was his strongest blow. A long time ago, when he was in Zhu Xian's ancestor realm, he was invincible among his peers with such a sword. But this sword was blocked at this time. Lin Sun stood there without moving. The flying sword was motionless in between his eyebrows, buzzing incessantly. Then, he held the flying sword in his hand, looked at it for a moment, and said, "Your attainments in the Great Tao are very good, no wonder you are called the only one in the heavens." In the distance, Gao Yangjue was silent for a while and said, "If it is a fair fight, are you sure you can win?" Lin Sun answered without hesitation, "Yes." Gao Yangjue obviously didn't expect that Lin Sun would answer so casually. "Tell me, why do you want to leave?" Lin Sun asked. In his eyes, Gao Yangjue was an extremely ordinary teenager, but his breadth and strength were so unfathomable that he seemed quite mysterious. "I am born with a keen premonition and insight to danger. Maybe you don't believe it, but it's true." Gao Yangjue said, "I believe it." Lin Sun's answer was still very fast. Gao Yangjue was startled and said, "Unfortunately, you and I are enemies, and we can never be friends." Lin Sun said with a smile, "I never intend to make friends with you people." Gao Yangjue sighed softly and said no more. Things like Ji Xiao, Jiang Linxiu, and Gao Yangjue being captured kept happening in the divine city of fortune today. Until dusk, Lin Sun's figure appeared out of thin air in the center of the moon lake. In one day, he captured all the princes in the city, a total of 37 people. Among them, Gao Yangjue, Ji Xiao, and Jiang Linxiu had the most outstanding status and strength. Which is more important, the eternal coffin or the lives of these princes? Lin Sun decided that when he left, he would see what those old monsters who had been guarding outside the city for 6 years would choose. Late at night, an acquaintance came to visit. Lin Sun's heart shook when he saw him. The visitor carried an ancient sword on his back, and his eyebrows were full of heroic spirit. It was Lu Zong, the successor of Wuyang. "Taoism Peer, I'm here on the order of my master. I have something to tell you." Lu Zong cupped his hands in salute. "Go ahead," Lin Sun said with a smile. "My master said that there will be a shocking change in the near future, and he asked you to be prepared. My master and other old friends of his will come to help you." Lu Zong said and took out a bronze pot. "Please accept this treasure. When the shocking change happens, you can use this treasure to help you resolve the fatal crisis when you leave." Refining God Pot? Lin Sun was surprised when he saw this treasure. A long time ago, when he was in the ancient Desolation Realm, every time he killed Ming Child, the latter's life would be saved by this pot. "Yes, this is the treasure of Dark Blood Underworld Emperor," Lu Zong said. "Senior Dark Blood Underworld Emperor has also heard of the grievances between you and his descendant, the Underworld Child. He was extremely furious about it, but in the end, he said that the grievances between juniors should be settled by juniors themselves." Lin Sun was stunned and said, "He doesn't hate me?" Lu Zong thought for a while and said, "If Dark Blood Underworld Emperor hated you, he wouldn't have taken out this refining God pot, would he? Of course, I don't dare to guess what an existence like the Dark Blood Underworld Emperor is thinking." Lin Sun said, "So, when I leave the Divine Fortune City this time, Dark Blood Underworld Emperor will help me like Senior Wuyang?" "Yes," Lu Zong nodded. Lin Sun couldn't help feeling strange. In the past years, he had robbed Ming Child countless times. But now, his father took out the refining God pot to help him. Did he really not care about the past grievances? If so, Dark Blood Underworld Emperor was really broad-minded, I see. Please tell Dark Blood Underworld Emperor that I, Lin Sun, have a clear distinction between kindness and hatred. I will repay kindness with kindness and take revenge with hatred. The grievances between me and Ming Child will be settled in the future," Lin Sun said after thinking for a moment. Lu Zong nodded and said, "Tao's Empire, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Thank you for coming back and forth. If there's a chance in the future, I will have a good drink with you," Lin Sun cupped his hands and said. Lu Zong said with a smile, "Sure." Soon, Lu Zong's figure disappeared in the vast night. There will be a shocking change in the near future. It seems that the rumor in the city is not false. But what is this shocking change? Lin Sun rubbed the refining god pot in his hand and fell into thought. In the same night, outside the city. That night, the news about the disappearance of Ji Xiao, Jiang Linxiu, Gao Yangjue, and the other 37 divine sons also spread outside the city and was known by the old antiques in the depths of the starry sky. For a moment, these old antiques could not calm down. They were shocked and angry, flustered and exasperated. There was no battle, no conflict, and no one saw how they disappeared. But they all disappeared in the city? How can this be? Is there a need to guess? It must be that damn Lin Sun. This must be his doing. Doesn't this mean that all the god princes from the various divine clans who went to Fortune Divine City have been wiped out by Lin Sun? How ruthless! In the night, a furious roar came from the starry sky, resounding through the starry sky and making the stars tremble. On the same night, the old antiques outside the city unanimously made a decision and sent a message to the city. They wanted to talk to Lin Sun personally. P.S. More will be added tonight. Chapter 2906. By the Moonlight Lake. Go back and tell those old fellows that I'll talk to them about the lives and deaths of these divine sons and daughters when I leave. Lin Sun turned around and left. The cultivators of the various divine clans who had been ordered to come felt relieved. They had all come with the mentality of certain death. Fortunately, Lin Sun didn't pay attention to these small fries. Soon, Lin Sun's reply spread throughout the city and reached the ears of the old fogies in the depths of the starry sky outside the city. "That kid is smart," one of the old fogies snorted. If Lin Sun were to bargain now, it would be a good thing for these old fogies. At the very least, they could talk about conditions and even promise some bait to lure Lin Sun out. But it was obvious that Lin Sun didn't intend to talk now. "No matter how smart a person is, he won't want to be trapped here forever," said another. Another person said, "This kid's reply has already revealed that he intends to leave Fortune City. Secondly, the god sons and goddesses of our various races are still alive. All this means that Lin Sun sees them as hostages and plans to talk to us when he leaves Fortune City." The old fogie's eyes flickered. They naturally understood this. "Everyone, what do you think you should choose between killing Lin Sun and saving the divine sons?" someone asked softly. The depths of the starry sky fell silent. "When the time comes, we'll choose an opportunity to kill Lin Sun and save the divine sons," someone said in a hoarse voice. "What if we can only choose one?" This question made the starry sky fall silent again. "Why do we have to choose? The eternal coffin must be left behind. What's more, how can a small fry like Lin Sun kill those divine sons and daughters under our noses?" someone said coldly. "But what if the lives of those divine sons and daughters are in danger? How can there be no bloodshed in such a matter? If the divine sons are gone, they can be cultivated again, but if the eternal coffin is gone, there won't be another chance. No, the divine sons of our clans can't die like this. We'd rather give up the eternal coffin." For a moment, the old fogies in the depths of the starry sky started arguing. For a long time, they failed to form a unified opinion, so that each of them was so angry that they gnashed their teeth at Lin Sun. Although they had besieged the city for 6 years, they hadn't gained any advantage. Instead, the divine sons and goddesses of their respective clans had all been captured in one fell swoop. How could they possibly be happy about this? Lin Sun didn't care what those old fogies outside the city would decide. He had never placed all his hopes of leaving the fortune-divine city on the hostages. Right now, there was only one thing he needed to solve. That was the origin of summer solstice. West of the city, Lonely Night Ridge. Lin Sun paid his respects to 13 again. 13 wasn't surprised by Lin Sun's arrival, and he said, "You don't have to tell me if the secrets within the fortune star are extremely private." Lin Sun said, "It's not a secret, but I'm not sure whether this secret is the answer your master was looking for." As he spoke, he described all the scenes he'd witnessed when he saw through the profundities of the star of creation. After listening, 13 said, "I understand. What my master was looking for that year should be the power to resolve that catastrophe, and that supreme figure surnamed Chen has mastered the method to resolve this catastrophe." He seemed very excited. Lin Sun said, "I also guess so." 13 looked at Lin Sun with his eyes. "Since you've mastered the power of the fortune divine city, can you know where that supreme figure went?" Lin Sun shook his head. "But you have a jade pendant surnamed Churn on you." 13 looked at the fiery red jade pendant hanging around Lin Sun's waist. Lin Sun said, "This is a gift from a senior. It should be related to that supreme figure, but I didn't know that the supreme figure was also surnamed Churn." 13 was obviously unwilling. "Apart from this, there's no other harvest?" Lin Sun said, "I'd also like to ask Senior, how much do you know about your master's origin?" 13 was silent for a while and said, "When I was young, I was just a lonely vagrant. I was almost beaten to death by other beggars because I snatched food from others when I was begging. It was my master who passed by and saved me." She said that the reason why she saved me was that even though I was about to be beaten to death, I didn't beg for mercy, nor did I blame others. In this regard, I was somewhat similar to her. It was also from then on that I followed the Lord. She said that she had never accepted disciples in her life, and only saved some people who caught her eye. I was the 13th person she saved. So, she named me 13. My master never talked to me about her past, but I knew that she was very powerful, so powerful that she could make the gods bow their heads and make the world surrender. Speaking of this, there was a touch of fanaticism in his eyes. The world of gods is known as the first world of the divine ruins of creation. There are 3 supreme gods in it, but no one dared to provoke her during the years when my master walked in this world. Later, as my cultivation deepened, I felt that my master's strength was unfathomable. She didn't seem to belong to the divine ruins of creation. Instead, she was like a passerby, always looking for something and never caring about the disputes of the world. I remember that the Lord once asked me if I would be willing to leave the divine ruins of creation with her if she were to leave one day. Of course I would, and I asked her where she would go if she left the divine ruins of creation. My master said. 13 was silent. What did she say? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. 13 took a deep breath and said, "My master said that she would come out of the darkness and find a ray of light to reside in, to be a person who has a home to return to." Lin Sun was shocked, thinking of what Xia Ji had said to him in the past. She said that her world was dark, and after meeting him, there was light in her world. A home to return to. 13's eyes were red, and his voice was hoarse. At that time, I realized that my master was like me. She used to be a homeless person. Even if she had supreme power, it was inevitable that she would be lonely, like walking in the darkness. Lin Sun couldn't calm his heart. Homeless. How powerful was her original body? Was she just looking for a home to return to? After a long time, Lin Sun finally made a decision. He took a deep breath, looked at 13, and said, "Senior, I think I can give you an answer." 13's body trembled, and he said, "You should have found a way to revive my master, right?" Lin Sun nodded. He didn't say anything more and took out the abyssal sword cauldron. Accompanied by a rain of light, Xia Ji's slender figure appeared in front of 13. "My lord?" 13's cold expression changed completely, and he knelt on the ground as if he had lost control. "My lord, you have already woken up." His tone was faintly choked with sobs. "Lin Sun?" Xia Zhi's eyes were full of doubts. "This senior is related to your life. You really don't recognize him?" Lin Sun asked softly. Xia Zhi stared at 13 and said, "I don't know him." 13, who knelt on the ground, said in a hoarse voice, "My lord, I know you have woken up from silence. It doesn't matter whether you remember me or not. Senior, she is not your master." Lin Sun calmed down and said, "In other words, Xia Zhi is your master's life spirit, and only she can wake up your master." Xia Zhi was stunned. "Life spirit?" Lin Sun gently grabbed Xia Zhi's white hand and said softly, "Xia Zhi, I often asked you about your life and experience in the past. Even you didn't know it yourself. But now I have already inquired about some news." Xia Zhi's reaction was very calm. She said, "Lin Sun, these are not important. It's fine as long as you are here." Lin Sun felt an inexplicable pain in his heart. He opened his mouth with difficulty and said, "Don't worry, I will always be with you. But you should know your past, what kind of person you were and where you came from." Xia Zhi looked up at Lin Sun and said, "I will listen to you." 1 sentence. 4 words. But it made Lin Sun's chest feel heavy, as if he was unable to breathe. This was an unconditional trust. Xia Zhi had said it many times in the past. But this time, it made Lin Sun's heart suffer. He was really afraid that Xia Zhi would awaken her previous memory and become a completely different person. This also meant that he was very likely to lose Xia Zhi. "My little friend." 13 suddenly spoke in a low and hoarse voice, "Can you listen to me?" "Senior, please go ahead," Lin Sun said. "Do you still remember the words written by His Majesty before entering the eternal coffin? Cut off this body's past and never suffer in the darkness again." Speaking of this, 13's chest heaved up and down. He seemed to be unable to control his emotions, and I know that His Majesty's greatest wish is to go out of the darkness and find a ray of light. So, he suddenly looked up at Lin Sun and was about to say something. Lin Sun interrupted him. "No!" 13 was stunned. Lin Sun was silent for a long time and said, "If I don't let Xia Zhi know about this, I am afraid that I will feel uneasy for the rest of my life." Then, he turned to Xia Zhi and told her everything. Xia Zhi looked very calm after hearing it. Her voice was as clear as the sound of nature. "If I was really the Eternal Night Emperor, Lin Sun, would you not want me?" Lin Sun said without thinking, "Of course not. I won't either." Xia Zhi answered even faster, as if such a decision was a matter of course for her. Lin Sun said softly, "Xia Zhi, when the power of the shackles of fate in your body disappears, you should be able to restore your past memory from your original body. By then, why should we wait for such a big event related to our fate?" Suddenly, a clear and unrestrained voice rang out. Soon after, a dignified and imposing figure walked into the palace. He was elegant and graceful like an immortal. Here comes the latest update. Chapter 2907. The newcomer wore a jade robe, and his figure was tall and straight like a pine tree. His every movement was like that of an immortal. Lin Sun and 13 were shocked. But when they saw the newcomer's appearance, Lin Sun was stunned and his eyes lit up. He cupped his hands and said, "So it's Senior." The newcomer was Chun Linkong, the strange man who called himself Burning Immortal. Chun Linkong smiled, "Sorry to keep you waiting." Then, he looked at Xia Zhi and said, "Miss, we meet again." Xia Zhi nodded slightly. "Senior, this is Senior Chun Linkong." Lin Sun introduced Chun Linkong to 13. 13 said, "Your surname is Chin. Could it be that you are related to that supreme figure?" Chun Linkong smiled and nodded. "It's my grandfather." Lin Sun's heart shook. He recalled that Tai Xian had once said that the word Chen on the red jade pendant hanging on his waist was left behind by Chun Linkong's grandfather. According to Tai Xian's deduction, Chen Lingkong's grandfather was an extremely incredible existence. Thinking about it, it made sense. How could someone who was unafraid of the shackles of time and space, and even built divine city of fortune and star vault of fortune here be an ordinary person? 13 couldn't help but say excitedly, "So you should know about the great calamity my lord encountered back then?" Chen Lingkong said, "That great tribulation was similar to the 5 Blight Tao tribulation, and it came from the mastermind behind the epoch transition. However, it targeted existences at the eternal realm. It should be called the Great Silence Lifeless Tribulation. Great Silence Calamity." It was the first time Lin Sun and 13 knew that there was such an unimaginable and strange calamity besides the 5 Blight Tribulation. Moreover, it came from the mastermind behind the change of an era. "Senior, who is the mastermind behind the scenes?" Lin Sun couldn't help but ask. Chen Lingkong smiled. "Aren't you going to invite me to sit down and have a chat?" Only now did Lin Sun realize that he hadn't invited Chen Lingkong to sit down since he appeared, so he hurriedly acted. After everyone took their seats, Chen Lingkong said, "I've been roaming the ruins of creation since a very long time ago. Up until now, I've roughly confirmed some things. Amongst them, the most important is the mastermind behind the scenes." He paused for a moment and said, "I'm sure all of you are clearly aware that there are over 100 eras in the ruins of creation, but every single one of them is trapped here and unable to leave. The reason is that all living beings in these eras are obstructed by an invisible energy of the laws, and even formidable eternal realm experts are unable to break through this obstruction. To put it simply, this shapeless energy of the laws is like a cage that has trapped the living beings of over 100 eras. Even if one attains the Tao and attains eternity in this lifetime, it's absolutely impossible for one to leave. At the beginning, I thought that the invisible energy of the laws had come from the ruins of creation. Only now did I realize that the invisible energy of the laws had come from the mastermind behind the scenes during the change of an era." Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help feeling terrified and asked, "Why did the mastermind do this?" Chen Lingkong said, "I don't know about that. But I'm sure that my grandfather came here for the sake of looking for the mastermind behind the scenes. But in the end, he probably noticed that the mastermind isn't in the ruins of creation." "Where would it be?" Lin Sun asked. Chen Lingkong was silent for a moment before he said, "In my opinion, among the 4 great Tao ruins, the ultimate ruin is the source of all the Taos in the world, and it is also the path to return. Even if it is as powerful as the eternal true world right now, if we trace the source of the power of the great Tao that covers it, we can still trace it back to the ruins of End. The Kunlun ruins is the main battlefield of every era. Every time the era is destroyed, countless people will fight for survival in the Kunlun ruins. As for the ruins of creation, it is a prison left behind by the mastermind. As for why it imprisoned the civilizations of over 100 eras here, even I don't know." It was the first time for Lin to hear such a shocking secret, and he couldn't help being shocked. The ruins of End was the source of all Taos in the world. The Kunlun ruins, the main battlefield of the change of eras. The mastermind of the ruins of creation had transformed this place into a prison. This was simply shocking. What about the ruins of profundity? Lin Sun calmed himself down and asked. Chen Lingkong said, "The door of profundity is mysterious within mysteries. I'm not sure about that place either, but I'll definitely have to go there in the future." Lin Sun was stunned. He recalled the Tao flame and the Taoist riding an ox painting he had obtained, and he also recalled that the owners of the 2 sharpening stones, Sharpening Heart and Nurturing Heart, had once entered the ruins of profundity of Tao. However, no one could give a reason for the ruins of profundity of Tao. Amongst the 4 great Tao ruins, the ruins of profundity of Tao was the most mysterious. In short, no matter who the mastermind is, no matter if he's formed from a strand of rule energy or an extremely terrifying cultivator, I'll definitely find out his true identity. Chen Linkong spoke softly with a resolute expression in his eyes. Fellow Taoist, let's not talk about the mastermind in the change of eras for now. May I be so bold as to ask if you've mastered the method to resolve the great silence fatality tribulation? 13, who had been silent all this time, couldn't help but ask. Chen Linkong said, "The method is hidden in the divine city of fortune." What? 13 felt as if he was struck by lightning. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. Chen Linkong said, "My young friend, you've already comprehended the mystery of the Star of Fortune, so you should already know the purpose of building the divine city of fortune. To protect the origin of fortune from being destroyed." Lin Sun said without hesitation. "That's right. The reason the mastermind hasn't taken complete control of the ruins of creation is because the creation quintessence still exists. The energy of the creation quintessence is sufficient to resist the great silence lifespan tribulation from the mastermind." Chen Linkong said, "My grandfather was aware of this, so he established the divine city of fortune with all his cultivation. The rule energy of the treasure river diagram shrouded and protected this place, so that the origin of fortune here could avoid the control of the mastermind for countless years." The treasure river diagram. Lin Sun suddenly recalled that after the green-clothed man surnamed Chen built the divine city of fortune, he'd taken out a black and round tortoiseshell and tossed it into the sky. It transformed into a forbidden rule energy that covered the entire divine city of fortune. So it turned out that all of this was for the sake of resisting the power of the mastermind and protecting the origin of fortune. It was no wonder that for countless years, even eternal realm experts would be repelled and attacked when they tried to approach the divine city of fortune. Even the rule energy formed by the treasure river diagram could resist the power of the mastermind, so how could it be unable to resist eternal realm experts? In this way, if my lord had arrived at the divine city of fortune all those years ago, then it's very likely that he would have been able to avoid that calamity? 13's expression changed indeterminately, and he was filled with sorrow. Chen Linkong nodded. Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh in his heart. At that time, Xia Zhi's main body had clearly found some clues and intended to come to the divine city of fortune. But she just so happened to encounter a calamity on the way here, and it could be said to have failed at the last moment. After a short while, Lin Sun realized something, and he said, "Senior's grandfather once formed the Star of Fortune here." "Why?" Chen Linkong smiled. "You've become the master of the divine city of fortune now, yet you still don't know its secrets?" Lin Sun was confused, and he shook his head and said, "Please enlighten me, senior." The civilizations of over 100 epochs have all survived the destruction of each epoch. They represent different cultivation civilizations and cultivation systems. Once you've grasped them one by one, you'll be able to know the heights that the civilizations of each epoch have attained on the path of the Grand Tao. Chen Linkong said, "Only by understanding all of this will you be able to understand exactly how formidable the great Tao at the peak of an era is. In this way, you'll be able to truly understand how formidable the power of the mastermind behind the scenes is." Lin Sun was shocked in his heart. Exactly how formidable were the great Tao of the past civilizations? Lin Sun didn't know. He only knew that no matter how formidable these civilizations were, they couldn't resist the power of the mastermind behind the scenes. Then, if he could understand the strongest power of the civilizations of the past eras, he could speculate how terrifying the power of the mastermind behind the scenes was. In this way, he might have a chance to catch up with, surpass, and defeat the mastermind. And this was the reason why Chen Linkong's ancestor created the Star of Fortune. "Although these are still a little far for you now," Chen Linkong said with a smile. Chen Linkong smiled and said, "But all of that isn't important. What's important is that you're the first person in the countless years of the past to see through the profundities of the star sky of creation. In the future, the grand Tao you take will definitely fuse with the strengths of the past eras and stand above the past and present. Anyone who has the potential to walk on this road can be regarded as the same Tao of my grandfather. In the end, Chen Linkong also sighed with emotion. Even he didn't expect that the successor of Fang Xiyuan, who had been valued by Golden Cicada, could have such potential on the road of Tao. And Lin Sun remembered the words of the man in green surnamed Chen. I'm not the only one on this road. Chen Linkong said in a low voice, my grandfather always plans before he acts, and he takes every possibility into account. I think he must have a deep meaning since he made such an arrangement at that time. Perhaps you'll be clearer about the meaning of becoming the master of the divine city of fortune after you attain the eternal Tao in the future. Lin Sun hesitated again and again, but he still couldn't help but ask, Senior, can you tell me your grandfather's name? In his mind, the man in green robe with an ancient sword on his back was really incredible. The more he learned about the things related to the divine city of fortune, the more he found how terrifying the man's cultivation was. Think about it, a man who could resolve the great silence fatality tribulation, build the divine city of fortune, and fight against the mastermind behind the scenes in the change of era. What kind of person was he? How could Lin Sun not be curious? Chen Linkong pondered for a moment before he took a deep breath and said, Of course I can. But I can't tell anyone, so I can only tell you. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel that it was inconceivable. It's only a name, yet it's actually related to the Tao? It was also at this moment that he recalled his master, the master of Fang Xiyuan. Those senior brothers and senior sisters of his had once said that his master's name was like the Grand Tao, and it couldn't be described with words. At this moment, Chen Linkong's expression revealed a rare solemn expression, and he cupped his hands towards the sky as if he was a junior bowing to a senior. After that, a Tao voice that resounded like a bell suddenly resounded in Lin Sun's heart. Chen Shi. P.S. Before 8:30 p.m. Chapter 2908. It was just 2 words, but Lin Sun's mind trembled like the Great Way. Every time Lin Sun muttered Chen Shi's name in his heart, he had an indescribable feeling as if he was looking at the Great Way and listening to the Tao. This was simply unimaginable. Even his name was related to the mystery of the Great Way. What realm did he have to reach to possess such power? Senior, how powerful is your grandfather? Lin Sun asked subconsciously. I don't know. Chen Linkong shook his head. Lin Sun was stunned for a moment, and then he said, Perhaps I'll understand when I can fight against the culprit behind the change of era. Chen Linkong said with a smile, Of course. After a pause, he said, Let's talk about the divine city of fortune. In the final analysis, it can be regarded as a refuge for those powerful figures who might encounter the Great Silence disaster. Chen Linkong said, As long as you arrive near the city before you encounter the disaster, you can be protected by the power released by the river diagram, and you won't have to fear the threat of the Great Silence disaster. It's easy to resolve the disaster. As long as you get the approval of the city lord, you can enter the city, comprehend the power of the origin of creation, and use the power of the origin of creation to resist the disaster. One was to avoid the disaster. The other was to resolve the disaster. There was an essential difference between the two. However, Lin Sun didn't expect that the way to resolve the disaster required the approval of the city lord to be realized one by one. Senior, doesn't this mean that I'm in control of this power now? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. Chen Linkong smiled with deep meaning and said, It's exactly like that. In other words, no matter which great figure it is in the future, if they want to deal with the lifeless tribulation of grand silence, then they must first obtain your acknowledgement before they can enter the city. Only in this way would they have the opportunity to comprehend the quintessence of creation. Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp. How could he not know how great this power was? After talking for a while, Chun Linkong suddenly said, "If you've really made up your mind, you can take out the eternal coffin now." Lin Sun looked at Xia Ji and said, "No matter what you experience later, remember that I'm always by your side." Xia Ji nodded. Compared with Lin Sun, she was like an outsider who didn't care about these things at all. 13 was unusually nervous. Buzz. Lin Sun didn't waste any time. A wisp of cyan light was released from between his eyebrows, which then turned into a bronze coffin in the void, exuding an ancient and boundless aura. Chun Linkong sized it up and said softly, "According to what my grandfather said, the eternal coffin should be called the boat of eternity. When in it, there is no calamity or tribulation. It is like arriving at the other shore, eternal and indestructible." The Ark of Eternity. Lin Sun reached out and pressed on the star map symbol in the center of the coffin lid, which was the symbol of the heaven accessing place. Accompanied by a muffled sound, the lid of the coffin was pushed open a little. Then, the strange and terrible sense of fatal danger came to Lin Sun's mind again, making him stiff all over. At the same time, Xia Ji let out a muffled groan and grasped Lin's left hand subconsciously. There was a touch of panic and confusion on her beautiful and fair face. Chun Linkong flicked his sleeve, causing a profound energy of the laws of taboo to surge into appearance, and it silently suppressed the strange and dangerous aura that suffused the eternal coffin. Lin took a deep breath and pushed the lid of the coffin with his right hand. Suddenly, the scene in the coffin was reflected. In the endless darkness, a slender figure was floating. She was dressed in an ancient black robe and wore a black crown on her head. Her hands were crossed on her abdomen, and in her slender and fair right hand, she was holding a scepter that seemed to be made of black jade. The scepter was filled with obscure mist, which covered her whole figure. Even so, her eyes could be vaguely seen closed, and her beautiful face, which was enough to make heaven and earth dim, was quiet and serene. She really looked like Xia Ji, which didn't seem to belong to this world. 13's pupils dilated little by little, and in the end, he seemed to be out of control, uttering a low and sorrowful voice, "My lord. My lord." This was the lord he was most familiar with, like a god in heaven, mysterious and supreme. The crown of fate, the staff of karma, the jade of time. Chun Linkong's eyes glowed with extraordinary splendor. It's just as the legend said. He seemed to have learned a lot about the past events related to the Eternal Night Emperor. "Lin Sun, why is she the same as me?" Xia Ji looked at the person in the coffin with her clear eyes and frowned slightly. She held Lin Sun's right hand tightly, but other than that, there was nothing unusual. This was because the aura emitted from the coffin had been suppressed by the rule power used by Chun Linkong. She is you. You are her." Lin Sun's voice was low, and it seemed a little difficult. He didn't know if this decision was right, but if he didn't do it, he would definitely not be at ease for the rest of his life. "The two of you, please step back. Leave the rest to me." Chun Linkong glanced at Lin Sun and 13. The two immediately stepped back. Xia Ji didn't want to let go of Lin Sun's hand, but she still listened to Lin Sun's arrangement and quietly stood in front of the eternal coffin. She would never refuse Lin Sun. No matter what. "Don't worry, I will always be here," Lin Sun said softly. Xia Ji nodded. Chun Linkong stretched out his hand and formed a seal with his fingers. Buzz. Wisps of obscure Taoist light tangled together and intersected with each other, forming a mysterious picture. It seemed as if it was burning, releasing a magnificent rain of light that engulfed Xia Ji's figure. Xia Ji's slender body trembled, and an unconcealable pain appeared on her face. Lin Sun's heart clenched, and he almost rushed over uncontrollably. Chun Linkong said, "This is removing the shackles of fate in her body. Don't be nervous." Even so, Lin Sun subconsciously clenched his fist. He looked at 13, who was also extremely nervous. How could this be? Before long, Chun Linkong exclaimed in surprise. "Senior, what's wrong?" Lin Sun couldn't help but ask. This lady's rule of fate seems to have gone through a nirvanic transformation. It's completely different from before. Chen Linkong frowned slightly. A long time ago, he had seen Xia Ji and sensed the power of the shackles of fate in her body. But now it was completely different. Indeed, so. Lin Sun suddenly remembered that after he entered the eternal world, he had placed the heavily injured Xia Ji in the abyssal sword cauldron to recuperate. It was also at that time that Xia Ji had been nourished by the power of the Nirvanic Order. Over the years, with the help of the Nirvanic Order, not only had Xia Ji's injuries healed, the shackles of fate in her body had also undergone a brand new rebirth and reconstruction. Interesting. In this way, it's not a bad thing. Chen Linkong's eyes were clear. As he spoke, he kept forming seals with his hands. Obscure and mysterious Dao diagrams appeared, and they turned into a rain of light that surged into Xia Ji's body. Gradually, Xia Ji's figure became blurry and illusory. This made Lin Sun nervous, and he was afraid that Xia Ji would disappear. In the end, Chen Linkong suddenly swung his arm and removed the power of the rule that had been pressing down on the eternal coffin. Boom! At that instant, the entire eternal coffin trembled violently, as if it had woken up from a deep slumber after being separated for eons. At the same time, Xia Ji, whose figure had become blurry and illusory, turned into a ray of white light and shot into the eternal coffin. Lin Sun's heart was about to go out of control at this moment, and his mind was in a mess. If Xia Ji recovered her past memories, would she become a completely different person? The suffocating feeling made Lin Sun clench his teeth to restrain the unprecedented anxiety and uneasiness in his heart. In the eternal coffin, the darkness rolled and surged violently like a tide. The scene that was happening in it was completely drowned by the endless darkness, so Lin Sun couldn't see anything even with all his strength. Chen Linkong inadvertently looked back and saw Lin Sun's anxious look that was about to lose control. He couldn't help feeling touched. He said softly, "My young friend, don't worry. You and this girl are bound by cause and effect, and your fate is interdependent. Nothing bad will happen to you." Lin Sun said bitterly, "Only at this moment do I realize how irreplaceable she is to me. In the past, I let her down too much." Chen Linkong smiled and said, "It's not too late to realize it now." As he was speaking, in the eternal coffin, the rolling darkness returned to silence like a tide. Lin Sun and the others looked over at the first time. They saw a figure walking out from the depths of the darkness. She was dressed in classic black clothes, wore a crown on her head, and held a scepter in her hand. He was like a god that had walked out from the darkness. He possessed a supreme might, and the boundless darkness all bowed down to him. Her fair face was as beautiful as a painting, and her facial features were like the masterpiece of God, which didn't seem to belong to this world. Every move she made carried an otherworldly charm. Anyone who saw her would tremble with shock and awe, as if they were looking at a god that couldn't be blasphemed. When her figure walked out of the eternal coffin, the hall suddenly fell into silence, and an indescribable majestic aura quietly filled the air. She was clearly close at hand, but it gave people the feeling that she was already standing proudly beyond the clouds of the ninth heaven, and they could only look at her from afar and couldn't touch her. After a short silence, 13 cried out involuntarily, "My lord!" He was so excited that his eyes turned red and tears flowed down uncontrollably. This was the lord he was most familiar with, the eternal Night Emperor who had taken him to travel around the world. Lin Sun felt suffocated, as if a stone was stuffed in his heart. Xia Ji, had she really changed completely? 13. A cold sigh sounded, and she looked at 13. "It's been so many years. Why did you wait here?" In a word, it proved that Xia Ji's original body had awakened, or in other words, Xia Ji had integrated with her original body and restored her past memories. Chen Linkong narrowed his eyes slightly. Lin Sun's face turned pale, and an unspeakable sense of loss suddenly welled up in his heart, as if the most important part of his heart had been gouged out and lost. "My lord, I have long vowed that I must wait for you to wake up in this life. Fortunately, my lord has finally woken up." 13 was so excited that he was a little incoherent. Fortunately, he soon thought of something and looked at Lin Sun. "My lord, it's this fellow practitioner Lin Sun who brought your life soul back." She looked at Lin Sun with a pale face, as if she had lost her soul. P.S. Goldfish eat first, it'll be a little late. Chapter 2909. She was silent for a moment and said, "Thank you." 2 words made the last support in Lin Sun's heart collapse, and his mind was in a mess. When had Xia Ji ever said such strange and polite words to him before? No. He was lost in thought, and his heart was sour and lost. If he could regret it, would he still make this decision? Lin Sun asked himself and finally got an answer. Yes. Do you remember Xia Ji's memory? Chun Linkong couldn't help asking at this time. Her slender figure looked mysterious and majestic. She said casually, "So what? I can erase some memories at any time." Chin Linkong couldn't help but widen his eyes. 13 was also anxious and said, "Master, child Lin Sun." Before he finished, Lin Sun interrupted him, "Don't say it." At this time, Lin Sun looked dull as if he had no feelings. Your master is your master, and Xia Ji is Xia Ji. Chin Linkong couldn't help but sigh. He didn't expect such a result. "I'll go out for some fresh air. You talk." After that, Lin Sun walked out of the hall. It was dark on Silent Night Ridge, and there were lights stretching like a long dragon in the distance. Lin Sun sat alone on a stone, lost in thought. He had expected such a result, but he didn't expect it to be true. Xia Ji had obviously recovered her past memories, and possessed the wisdom and state of mind of the past. She was no longer the Xia Ji he knew. Lin Sun suddenly felt indescribably powerless. No matter how high his achievements were and how great his reputation was, what was the use of it? He still couldn't get what he wanted after all. Lin Sun didn't know what he would become without Xia Ji in the future. He didn't know anything. Unprecedented frustration and confusion reverberated in his heart like a fog that couldn't be dispelled. He even had no strength to be angry, regretful, and angry. Those who are overwhelmed with sorrow can only bid farewell to each other. "Do you regret it?" A cold voice rang out. Lin Sun was stiff all over. He turned his head and saw her figure had come to his side. In the night she looked so mysterious, supreme, and majestic. And so strange. After a long silence, Lin Sun shook his head. "This is my own choice. Have you ever thought of making her forget the past for the rest of her life? If that's the case, I believe she won't have any objections." She sat on the side with her hands crossed. Her beautiful eyes were like stars in the sky. "I have," Lin Sun said softly, "but I prefer to let her live clearly instead of ignoring everything else as long as she is with me. In other words, I just want her to live for herself even if she is with me." In the end, he smiled bitterly. "Perhaps doing this is very stupid, but my heart is telling me that if I don't do this, I will regret it for the rest of my life." "I've regretted it for the rest of my life, and I can't rest easy," she nodded and said. "I know all her memories, from the time you met in Feiyun village to the time she found me. Every scene is vivid in my mind. I know she can only have you in her heart. But obviously you haven't really taken this feeling seriously." Lin Sun was stunned. "What do you mean?" She stood up and looked into the distance. Her voice was indifferent. "If you like her, why don't you tell her? Don't you think she is very humble by your side?" Lin Sun was stunned. "Do I? Does she ever care who you are? Does she care that you already have a wife and children? Have I ever refused you once?" Her voice was cold, and every question made Lin Sun's mind shocked. In the end, she looked at Lin Sun. "What about you? What have you done for her? If you think it's enough to keep her by your side and not let others bully her, then in my opinion, there is no need for her to stay by your side." These words were like a heavy hammer, hitting Lin Sun's heart hard. His expression was absent-minded, and he said bitterly after a long time, "Perhaps I was really wrong. I took her to be my life, and I've always firmly believed that no matter who came, unless I died, they would absolutely be unable to take her away from me. But now, it seems that I really owe her too much." He couldn't help coughing violently in the end. There was blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. This was the result of the great impact on his state of mind, which hurt himself. This was also the first time that Lin Sun coughed blood because of the ups and downs of his state of mind. He didn't have it before. He wouldn't have it in the future. Because in this world, only Xia Ji could make his state of mind go wrong. "If she were still here, would you marry her?" "Yes," Lin Sun said subconsciously. Then he was stunned and said with a desolate look, "But it's too late. I thought I could do things with a clear conscience in this life, but now, speaking of this," he was so sad that his eyes turned red. A clear conscience. It was ridiculous. In this world, who dared to say that he could live with a clear conscience? The more he thought about it, the more depressed he became. He didn't know how long it had been. A voice sounded, "Lin Sun, I'm hungry." "Okay, I'll cook something delicious for you." Lin Sun stood up subconsciously. This was an instinctive habit he had developed over the years. Every time Xia Ji said this, he would naturally take out the best things he had collected and make delicious food for her. It was like this before, and it was still like this now. However, after getting up this time, Lin Sun was stunned. As if struck by lightning. He stared straight at the slender figure standing in front of him, who was still wearing the ancient robe, wearing a crown and holding a scepter. "But, Lin Sun, why are you looking at me like this?" She frowned, her clear and beautiful eyes full of doubts. Just like in the past years, she never hid her emotions in her heart. Lin Sun only felt that something was fermenting in his heart and was about to explode. His mind was a little confused. How could this be? Could it be? Did someone bully you? She asked again, looking Lin Sun up and down with a worried look in her eyes. Lin Sun's voice trembled and his whole body trembled with excitement. "Xia Ji, is it really you?" She frowned and said, "Lin Sun, are you stupid? Of course it's me." Lin Sun was stunned. He suddenly took a few deep breaths and grinned. But as he smiled, his eyes became moist. He couldn't control himself anymore. He stepped forward and hugged the slender figure tightly, as if he was afraid that he would lose her again. The tears in his eyes finally flowed down disappointingly. "Xia Ji, it's really you," he murmured, joy surging in his heart like an erupting volcano. The feeling of regaining what he had lost was like a tide of ups and downs, drowning him completely. In his life of cultivation, there had never been a day or a moment as joyful, excited and happy as this moment. He hugged her tightly, as if he was hugging his own life. At that time, the night was just nice. P.S. This chapter is slightly short, but I've tried my best. I hope everyone likes it. Chapter 29:10. A table of sumptuous dishes was placed in front of Xia Ji. As usual, she carefully and attentively wiped out the food on the table. Not far away, Lin Sun was barbecuing. The huge yellow and oily beast leg made a sizzling sound under the fiery red flame, and the tempting fragrance spread. In the night, this remote and deserted place in the mountain added some smoke and fire. From time to time, Lin Sun would look up at Xia Ji. His eyes were full of smiles, his lips were full of smiles, and his whole body was full of smiles. He had a guilty conscience. However, what was lost was regained. It was just like the twists and turns of the road. There was nothing in the world that could match such joy. In the palace not far away, Chern Linkong and 13 watched this scene quietly with a smile on their faces. Master's decision is right. Although her past memory and cultivation are sealed, as long as she walks out of the darkness and lives in the light, she will no longer be homeless, 13 said softly. I know that this is Master's greatest wish. A person who masters the law of fate will naturally not be willing to be teased by fate. This choice may be regarded as a new life for her. In the future, her attainments in the Tao will not be weaker than before. Chen Linkong said slowly. After eating and drinking, Xia Ji fell asleep. Lin Sun wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk with her. But after seeing this, he couldn't help feeling relaxed and happy. This was the Xia Ji he was most familiar with. She ate and slept. No matter what happened in the outside world, she only lived in her own world. And he was in her world. However, Lin Sun knew that his state of mind had changed. One day, he would welcome summer solstice into his family in a grand manner. Perhaps Xia Ji didn't care about these things at all, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that he just wanted to do more for her. As the Holy Emperor of Eternal Night said before, he had never really faced this feeling in the past. But in the future, it would never happen again. How do you feel? Chen Linkong found Lin Sun and asked with a smile. I used to be like a person in a dream. Now I wake up and suddenly see the light. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. Chen Linkong said, Now, do you think that Lady Xia Ji's background is still very important? Lin Sun shook his head. It doesn't matter anymore. The reason why he came to the Ruins of Fortune to investigate Xia Ji's past was to make a decision. Now that Xia Ji had fused with her body, her past life was no longer important. The Eternal Night Divine Emperor is an extraordinary woman. After fusing with her life soul, she could have comprehended the mysteries of the origin of creation in this divine city of creation and resolved the great silence lifeless tribulation, allowing herself to achieve a true breakthrough. Chen Linkong said, but in the end, she didn't do that, and she sealed her past experiences and attainments in order to fulfill Miss Xia Ji's wish. Such boldness is sufficient to make all the men in the world sigh at their inferiority. Lin Sun was also overwhelmed with emotions. In the eyes of the Divine Emperor of Eternal Night, perhaps the Great Way was not as important as the words, having a home to return to. Little friend, there is something you must know. Please enlighten me, Senior. Miss Xia Ji is no longer a wisp of life soul, but has mastered her original body. But the Eternal Night Divine Emperor has sealed her cultivation and memories, which means that the power Miss Xia Ji has now is still her previous cultivation. Chen Linkong said, and the three treasures, the crown of fate, the staff of karma, and the jade of time, have also been turned into natal objects and sealed. At present, she can't use them with her current cultivation. After a pause, he continued, however, as Miss Xia Ji's cultivation improves in the future, the power sealed by the Eternal Night Divine Emperor will be gradually removed. In other words, every time Miss Xia Ji's cultivation improves, she can open a layer of seal and obtain the power that belongs to the Eternal Night Divine Emperor. But you don't have to worry, Xia Ji will not be affected by the Eternal Night Divine Emperor. In the end, there will be no Eternal Night Divine Emperor in this world. In the end, Chen Linkong sighed. A man who had the ability to resolve the great silence fateless disaster would rather cut off his previous cultivation just to get out of the darkness and have a home to return to. If it were other powerful figures, would they be willing to do so? Thank you for your guidance, Senior. Lin Sun was also grateful to the Eternal Night Divine Emperor. In fact, this is what the Eternal Night Divine Emperor told me, and I just tell you. Chen Linkong said, or, from the moment she woke up in the eternal coffin, she had already made a decision. The reason why she treated you like that was nothing more than to see what kind of person you were and whether you were worthy of being entrusted by Miss Xia Ji. Lin Sun thought of the previous scenes, and his heart was in turmoil. Whoosh! Chen Linkong raised his hand and waved, and the eternal coffin appeared out of thin air, but its shape had changed. It was like a bronze boat, diffusing a vast and heavy atmosphere. This treasure has been removed by the Eternal Night Divine Emperor. He said he would give it to you as a gift. Please accept it. When Miss Xia Ji practices in the future, she can place her in this treasure, which will be of great benefit to her perception of fate, time, and cause and effect. Chun Linkong said. Lin Sun nodded and put away the eternal boat. Chin Linkong smiled and said, other than that, this treasure contains shocking mysteries. Apart from the star chart that leads to the gate of eternity, there's also a mysterious fortune. After little friend reaches the eternal realm, you will be able to comprehend it. The star map leading to the eternal gate. This reminded Lin Sun of the disaster that his great-grandfather Luo Tongtian experienced. Senior, do you know where the eternal gate leads to? Lin Sun asked. Chin Linkong shook his head. You have to think about it and explore it yourself in the future. When my great-grandfather went to the eternal gate, he was seriously injured by a mysterious law bell, so he was besieged by the enemies of the eighth heaven. Lin Sun said, and when the eternal night divine emperor came to the divine city of fortune, there was also a mysterious law bell in the great silence disaster. In your opinion, is this the same law bell? Chun Linkong narrowed his eyes and said, is it the primordial bell? The primordial bell. Lin Sun was also shocked. Chun Linkong said, if it is really the primordial bell, it is very likely to be as you said. Because according to the information left by my grandfather, the primordial bell is also an ominous object born in the change of era, and it is very likely to come from the person behind the scenes. Lin Sun couldn't help saying, if so, doesn't it mean that the place where the eternal gate leads to is very likely the place where the person behind the scenes is hiding? Chun Linkong shook his head. No one knows whether the person behind the scenes is a person or a rule force. After thinking about it, he said, if there is a chance, I will also go to the eternal gate to see what mysteries are hidden in it. Lin Sun didn't think too much about it. These things were still far away for him now. When are you going to leave, my little friend? Chun Linkong asked with a smile. Of course, the sooner the better. Lin Sun was refreshed. After being trapped in this city for more than 6 years, Lin Sun naturally wanted to leave as soon as possible. What's more, his purpose of coming to the ruins of fortune had been achieved, so he really didn't want to waste any more time here. After all, if he wasn't trapped in the divine city of fortune with his cultivation, he would have had the opportunity to reach the nirvana realm a few years ago. Alright, then let's leave early tomorrow morning. Chun Linkong made a decision. Although Lin Sun was excited, he couldn't help but ask, Senior, there are many eternal realm antiques guarding outside the city. How should we leave? Chun Linkong smiled and teased, of course we go out. Lin Sun, give me the god refining pot. Chun Linkong said. Lin Sun was startled and suddenly said, so Senior has been in contact with Senior Wuyang and the others for a long time. As he spoke, he took out the god refining pot and handed it to Chun Linkong. Chun Linkong said, do you still remember what I told you before? You're the master of this city now, and only almighty figures that obtain your acknowledgement can enter this city and not be suppressed by the energy of the laws of this city. Lin Sun nodded. Chun Linkong said, now you can condense a rule brand and inject it into the god refining pot. Lin Sun didn't think too much about it. The complete diagram of the divine city of fortune appeared in his mind, and then he formed a seal with his hands. Instantly, a shapeless rule force was drawn over and coiled around the tip of his finger before condensing into an obscure and profound seal. This seal was like a key, and once one obtained its power, one would be able to enter and exit the divine city of fortune at will no matter how high one's cultivation was. When Lin Sun poured the energy of the seal into the god refining pot, a wave of strange fluctuation instantly transformed into ripples that spread out, and it seemed as if the rules of this expanse of the heavens and the earth had silently changed. Fellow Taoists, please show yourself. At the same time, Chun Linkong tossed the god refining pot into the air and spoke in a light voice. Bang! The god refining pot glowed and shot out numerous dazzling and resplendent rays of light that condensed into over 20 figures in the air. Every single figure emitted boundless and terrifying divine might that covered the heavens and the earth like an abyss, and they were like gods that stood towering above the heavens and the earth. Ah! How many years has it been? I've finally entered this city. Thank you for your help, Brother Chen. A voice rumbled like thunder. It was a divine tree that was tens of thousands of meters tall that spoke. There were actually stars hanging on its branches, and its leaves were rolling like a flowing galaxy that poured out endless starlight. Myriad star divine tree. Lin Sun's pupils constricted. This was a legendary creature that possessed the power of myriad stars and could evolve into a starry sky. It was an eternal existence. No, we should thank this young friend Lin Sun. If he hadn't seen through the mysteries of the Star of Fortune, how could we have the opportunity to enter this city? A gentle voice sounded like the chanting of Sanskrit. Lin Sun looked up and saw the figure of a Buddha standing there. The figure didn't seem to be tall, but it filled the entire sky. The light of Buddha flowed around its body, and it sprinkled crystal and divine heavenly flowers. Lin Sun was shocked. Xingjia Buddha. A long time ago, the supreme figure that left behind the 3,000 pagodas in the Buddha earth of the absolute domain. It was also the heart of slaughter that he left behind. P.S. The second one is slightly later. Chapter 29:11. When my Tao is proved, I know the suffering of all living beings. So far, Lin Sun still couldn't forget the words left by Xingjia Buddha when he obtained the heart of slaughter in the absolute domain. This was a real great mercy, which bemoaned the state of the universe and pitted the fate of mankind. Yes, we should thank my young friend Lin Sun. Ha ha ha, I've prepared for it. It's just a big battle. We've been traveling in the ruins of fate for so many years, but there are only a few opportunities to fight against the Protoss. Let's compete with them this time. Voices resounded between heaven and earth. Some were ethereal, some were tranquil, some were heroic, and some were deep, as if the gods were talking and stirring up the universe. Lin Sun looked over and quickly recognized Battle Emperor Wu Yang. Her figure was slender and as cold as the moon, but she exuded a lonely and cold aura, as if she stood aloof from the world. Chun Linkong once said that all the fortunes in the absolute domain were obtained by you. In this way we can call each other friends, Wu Yang said softly with an amiable look in his eyes. Lin Sun cupped his hands at a distance. Then, he recognized Dark Blood Underworld Emperor, whose figure was bathed in obscure light, like an emperor who dominated the world, exuding an arrogant aura. Don't worry, I won't argue with you about the grudge between you and my son. Dark Blood Underworld Emperor snorted coldly. Lin Sun also cupped his hands at a distance. Soon, Lin Sun recognized another familiar figure. It was a white-robed man who was as handsome as a young man. The aura he exuded was like 1,000 elephants bursting out, oppressing the universe. Divine Elephant Emperor. In the absolute domain, Lin Sun had been tested and tempered in the Wanxiang ancient steel, and obtained the lifelong experience and fortunes of the divine Elephant Emperor. How could he not recognize him? Seeing so many powerful figures of the ancient wasteland fighting alliance, Lin Sun couldn't help feeling emotional. Star Tree, Xingjia Buddha, Dark Blood Underworld Emperor, Battle Emperor Wu Yang, Divine Elephant Emperor, any one of them was powerful enough to shock the world and overlook all living beings. Now they were all gathered together. In addition to these people, there were more than a dozen peerless giants and overlords present. These powerful beings had walked out of the starry sky ancient path in the ancient desolation realm since the immemorial age. Of course, they were no longer at the Emperor realm. Lin Sun immediately felt that the power surging in their bodies had exceeded the scope of immortal level. It was incredible. Everyone, long time no see. Back then, thousands of us walked out of the ancient path of the starry sky together. Now there are less than 30 of us left, and we are scattered all over the world. At this moment, Chun Linkong sighed with emotion. If it wasn't for this fortuitous coincidence, I don't know how long it would take for us to gather together like this again." The experts of the ancient desolation realm also sighed with emotion. It was indeed not easy for them to walk side by side on the path of the great Tao until now. Over the course of countless years, it often meant that there were too many incidents of life and death. At that time, there were a few thousand people that had left the ancient path in the starry sky with them. However, after experiencing countless years of ups and downs, only a few dozen of them were still alive now. The great Tao is heartless, and it is all in the separation of life and death. "Everyone, how about we drink to our heart's content tonight?" Chen Linkong suggested. "Okay. Sure. That is how it should be. Ha ha ha, I've had this thought for a long time." The group of experts laughed. On this night, Lonely Night Ridge was filled with cheers and laughter, and it was a joyous occasion. Lin soon chatted with them and greeted them one by one. He talked about the various things that had happened in the land of extinction. Wu Yang, Xing Jia, Long Xiang, and the others also sighed with emotion. Lin soon asked Wu Yang a question that had been in his mind for a long time. Why did she leave a headless body in the land of extinction? Wu Yang's answer was simple. Her head was cut off by an enemy and made into a white bone jade pendant. She regarded it as the shame of her life. Later on, this enemy was also beheaded by her, giving her a taste of her own medicine. Wu Yang also said that she had met Lin Sun's uncle, Luo Qingheng. She knew about the existence of the heaven-accessing place and how terrifying the talent of the devouring abyss was. From Xing Jia, Long Xiang, and the others, Lin Sun also learned a lot about the descendants of Fang Xiyuan. For example, Xing Jia and Gu Yupu, the ninth senior brother, had discussed Tao for 100 years and appreciated each other. Long Xiang and Li Xianwei were enemies. After fighting for thousands of years, the third senior sister, Ruosu, intervened and turned the hostility into friendship. What was even more unbelievable to Lin Sun was that, according to Chen Linkong, the Dark Blood Underworld Emperor and the eighth senior brother, Bo Swansea, were actually old enemies. Both of them were fond of collecting rare treasures in the world. It was inevitable that there would be some conflict, but every time, it was the Dark Blood Underworld Emperor who was at a disadvantage. He was even robbed by Bo Swansea. When talking about the past, the Dark Blood Underworld Emperor's face darkened. He cursed that among the descendants of Fang Xiyuan, Bo Swansea was the most sinister and black-hearted one. Lin Sun couldn't help but be amused. Only now did he realize that his robbery of the Son of Hell was similar to Bo Swansea's robbery of the Dark Blood Underworld Emperor. Apart from that, the mighty figures of the ancient desolation realm also told Lin Sun many things that he didn't know. Lin Sun couldn't help but widen his horizons. Tonight, Lin Sun finally got to see the glory of his ancestors. It made him feel a lot of emotions. Thinking back to a long time ago, he was just a young man searching for the great path. The mighty figures present here were existences that he could only look up to. They were like legendary existences. Now, he could gather together with them and talk cheerfully. How could he not feel emotional? It could be said that this was also the happiest day since Lin Sun entered the ruins of fate. Late at night, Lin Sun found 13 and asked, "Senior, what are your plans for the future?" 13 had obviously thought about this question for a long time. He said, "I have been trapped in this city for countless years. It's time for me to find my own way to break through." Lin Sun already knew that 13's cultivation had been in the transcendent realm for a long time. The way he wanted to break through must be related to the eternal Tao. It's a pity that this ruins of fate is shrouded by an invisible rule power. It's like a cage. Any cultivator who belongs to hundreds of eras or civilizations can't leave. Otherwise, I hope that Senior can go to the eternal Tao with me. Lin Sun sighed softly. He admired 13 very much. He even felt that he owed him. After all, because of Xia Ji, the eternal night divine emperor disappeared from the world. This was probably a great blow to 13. Therefore, before he left, Lin Sun wanted to do something for 13. If you want, there's no harm in letting him stay in this city. Chun Linkong came from afar and said softly, as long as he gets your approval, he won't be suppressed by the rule power of this city. In this way, he can also comprehend the source of fate in this city. This will be of great help to him in the eternal Tao realm. Lin Sun's eyes lit up. He looked at 13. What do you think, senior? 13 said, that's naturally the best. Lin Sun nodded with a smile. My young friend, tomorrow morning I will send you off with the others. Before that, do you have any unfinished business? Chun Linkong asked. Lin Sun shook his head. He only had two purposes in coming to the ruins of fate this time. One was to save his parents, and the other was to solve the problem of Xia Zhi's identity. Now that he had achieved his goals, he naturally had nothing to worry about. Lin Sun asked, Senior, I have captured the divine sons of the various divine clans. I wonder if they will help me leave tomorrow? Chun Linkong shook his head. Anyone who has stepped into the eternal realm will understand that the value of the eternal coffin is more important than the lives of those divine sons. Naturally, they won't really care about the lives of those divine sons. Lin Sun said, that is to say, even if they want to negotiate with me, it's impossible for them to let me go just because their lives are in my hands. Yes, Chun Linkong nodded. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold. He said, then I know what to do. Chun Linkong seemed to realize something and said, my young friend, if you completely offend the major divine clans in the ruins of fate, I'm afraid there will be a lot of trouble in the future. Aren't they unable to leave the ruins of fate? It's impossible now, but it doesn't mean it's impossible in the future. In the future, let's talk about the future later. Lin Sun looked very calm. Chun Linkong smiled and said no more. Late at night, in the depths of the starry sky outside the city. Everyone. Suddenly, a muddy and aged voice resounded, and it was filled with excitement. I made a divination earlier, and that shocking event will arrive tomorrow. Suddenly, there was a wave of power in the depths of the starry sky, and terrifying thoughts resounded. What? Is the divination true? Someone asked. It's absolutely true. The divination this time is unprecedentedly clear. In my opinion, there must be something abnormal about the little guy surnamed Lin. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chosen to leave the city tomorrow. The muddy old voice said. Since it's a shocking change, it must have something to do with him. But there may be other changes. You'd better be prepared for the unexpected. Someone said in a low voice. Yes, there is a faint bloody light in the divination this time, which is a sign of great danger. I think there is only one possibility. At this point, the muddy old voice fell silent. What possibility? Brother Gao Yang, don't keep us guessing anymore. Many people couldn't help but ask. I'm worried that this bloody disaster may have something to do with us. His words silenced all the people present, and the atmosphere in the depths of the starry sky suddenly became depressed. What do you mean? A cold voice asked. You should be well aware that if Lin Sun leaves the city tomorrow, he will have no chance to leave. But the eternal coffin in his body may cause a bloody storm. When the muddy old voice said this, there was a silence in the depths of the starry sky. They all realized that when they fought for the eternal coffin, the bloody disaster would naturally come. In the end, who would be able to obtain this treasure? Who would be able to withdraw safely? No one knew. But they were all sure that no one present would give up the eternal coffin. This is destined to be inevitable. Tomorrow you can rely on your own means. A deep voice said resolutely and decisively. This night, the atmosphere in the depths of the starry sky was particularly depressing. A storm was coming. P.S. It's time to write the final plot of the Ruins of Fate. Tonight, Rong Jinyu adjust her thoughts and state, and continue to write tomorrow. Finally, tomorrow is the first day of the month. Ask for a guaranteed monthly ticket. Chapter 29:12. Early in the morning on the next day, Lin soon walked towards the South Heaven entrance by himself on the bustling street. Many cultivators noticed this scene, and they felt bewildered in their hearts. What does this fellow surnamed Lin intend to do? When they saw Lin Soon's figure gradually approach the South Heaven entrance, all the cultivators that were paying attention to Lin Soon's movements were horrified. Lin Soon intends to leave the city? There was an enormous square outside the South Heaven entrance, and all those that entered and exited the city would stop on the square before entering or leaving. However, at this moment the square was deathly silent, because all the cultivators that came to Fortune City today had their paths blocked off by a group of boundlessly terrifying auras, and they were unable to move forward. Naturally, no one was bound to be able to leave the city. So, when Lin Soon's figure appeared on the enormous square, he seemed to be extremely conspicuous, and he seemed to be extremely lonely as he stood there all by himself. Bang! In the depths of the starry sky, a group of terrifying auras that had been suppressed and waiting for a long time surged. The stars shook while space rumbled, and it seemed like the entire universe was trembling violently. After that, numerous terrifying consciousnesses swept towards the South Heaven entrance. However, when they were about to approach the enormous square, they were obstructed by the energy of the laws that covered the entire city. So, Lin Soon wasn't affected at all, and his expression was calm and indifferent. He gazed towards the depths of the starry sky, and then he suddenly smiled and said, "I've made all of you wait." His casual words resounded through the murderous and turbulent starry sky, and it entered into the ears of all the seniors that had been waiting here for over 6 years. "Lin Soon, do you know your crimes?" A heavy voice resounded. A black-robed man with black hair and a black beard appeared in the depths of the starry sky. His entire body was coiled with arcs of black lightning, and he was like an overlord of lightning in the darkness. Liangqiu Xiao, an eternal realm senior of the Liangqiu clan. He'd questioned Lin Soon in a stern voice as soon as he arrived, and if it was any other ordinary person, that person would have probably been terrified a long time ago. However, Lin Soon smiled and said, "Just these words of yours have caused the death of all the clansmen of the Liangqiu clan in the city." A rain of light flowed as a screen of light floated up into appearance. Numerous scenes appeared on the screen of light, and every single scene revealed the figure of a cultivator. However, in merely an instant, they were soundlessly annihilated. In an instant, these scenes vanished without a trace. "Did you see it clearly?" Lin Sun asked with a smile. As the master of the divine city of fortune, he could annihilate any cultivator in the city with a single thought. In the distance, Liangqiu Zhao's expression had turned gloomy while divine light surged explosively from his eyes, and it caused this expanse of the starry sky to roil and surge. He was furious, because all the people that were killed on the screen of light were from the Liangqiu clan. Evil creature! Liang Qiuxiao's killing intent was piercingly cold. Black lightning rumbled all over his body as he suddenly punched out. Boom! In the sky above Creation City, a strand of energy of the laws that seemed like a taboo and obscure descended abruptly, and it was like a divine whip of the heavens that fiercely slashed this fist into pieces and dispersed it. Liangqiu Zhao's pupils constricted, and he moved far away to avoid being struck by the energy of the laws. Lin Sun noticed this scene as well, and he naturally knew that this was the forbidden energy formed from the river diagram laws that covered the sky above the entire city. "Lin Sun, let go of the divine princes of our clans and we'll let you live. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll never be able to leave this city again." An aged and muddy voice resounded. In the distant starry sky, the figure of a young man in a golden robe appeared. His eyes were like a pair of golden lamps that glowed brilliantly. He stood with his hands behind his back while a myriad of divine flames rushed out from behind him, and it seemed as if it would burn the starry sky. His aura was extremely terrifying. He looked like a young man, but his voice was muddy and aged to the extreme. This person was one of the seniors of the Gaoyang clan, Gaoyang Jing. "Is this the opinion of all of you?" asked Lin Sun. "Yes." Gaoyang Jing nodded. Lin Sun let out a long sigh and said, "What a pity." Gaoyang Jing frowned and said, "What's a pity?" Lin Sun said, "Last night, I killed all the 37 divine princes and goddesses that I captured. If all of you had said this earlier, then they wouldn't have had to die." He had a disappointed expression on his face. But these words caused Gaoyang Jing and the other seniors to be shocked and furious, and they almost didn't dare believe their ears. "How dare you? You actually killed them? Damned bastard, you deserve to be cut into pieces. Damn it, damn it!" The starry sky was tumbling and shaking, and angry roars resounded through the depths of the starry sky as if the gods were angry. None of these seniors had expected that Lin Sun would dare to kill the hostages. The terrifying movement shocked all the practitioners in the divine city of fortune. Their expressions changed, and they became more and more puzzled. Lin Sun. What on earth did he want to do? Do you intend to live in this city for the rest of your life by doing this? After a while, Gaoyang Jing spoke. His golden robe fluttered and his aura was terrifying. "No, I'm leaving today." Lin Sun shook his head. "Leave?" All the seniors in the depths of the starry sky were stunned. Without the hostages, how could he leave alive? "You seem to be full of confidence. Do you have another way?" Gaoyang Jing asked. Lin Sun nodded, "Of course." For a time, Gao Yangjing, Liang Qiushao, and all the other seniors frowned without end. They were very puzzled because who would be able to help Lin Sun in the ruins of creation, and who would dare to go against the various divine clans? Wasn't this courting death? Lin Sun didn't say anything more. The smelting god pot suddenly appeared in his hand. This treasure was mottled and suffused with a chaotic and obscure light. The smelting god pot of Old Man and Shui. Some seniors recognized it at the first possible moment. So it's this old thing. The others recalled that a long time ago, someone had once walked in the Great Ming era with the smelting god pot in his hand, and he revealed extremely shocking power. There was once a mighty figure of the divine clan who wanted to seize this treasure, but he was refined to death by this treasure. The Great Ming era was originally the territory of the Wu clan, but it was occupied by a group of outsiders a long time ago, and the Dark Blood Emperor was one of them. Someone whispered. In this way, this kid seems to have obtained the help of those outsiders. Many people realized something, and their eyes flickered with a cold light. Ridiculous! For countless years, these outsiders only dared to live in the Great Ming era, and they didn't dare to make trouble at all. Otherwise, I'm afraid they would have been annihilated by our divine clan a long time ago. Now, they still dare to meddle in this matter with their strength? They're simply courting death. Perhaps they are also willing to risk everything for the eternal coffin. Humph, let's take this opportunity today to let these outsiders know who the real master of the ruins of fate is. A smelting god pot allowed those seniors to speculate a lot of information in an instant. It could be seen how vicious the eyes of these old guys who had lived for countless years were. Lin Sun didn't care about this. Although he was a participant in this upcoming battle, he was doomed to have no ability to challenge any eternal realm existence, even if the other side only sent out their Dharma form. Killing an immortal figure like him at the peak of the Heaven Longevity realm was still as easy as pinching an ant. In the final analysis, this would be a contest between figures at the eternal realm. Whether he could leave the ruins of fate depended on whether Chen Linkong and other powerful figures of the ancient desolation realm could break through the current predicament. Lin Sun didn't worry about this. Therefore, after taking out the smelting god pot, his figure flashed and swept towards the distant starry sky. Boom! Just as Lin Sun's figure left the area of the divine city of fate, a giant golden hand appeared out of thin air and grabbed at him fiercely. The 5 fingers of the giant golden hand were like pillars supporting the sky, and the palm lines were like traces of the Great Way, filled with the terrifying power of the eternal realm, which could almost smash the mountains and rivers in the sky. "Let me!" A cold voice rang out from the smelting god pot. Faster than the voice, a branch pouring with silver starlight pierced out at an incredible speed and blocked in front of the giant golden hand. The stars condensed on the branch exploded with a loud bang. The starry sky shook violently, and unparalleled terrifying torrents swept out. The dazzling divine light illuminated the dark starry sky. Visible to the naked eye, the giant golden hand was pierced and exploded with a loud bang. In the distant starry sky, a cold snort came. Then, a middle-aged man in a fiery red robe emerged, holding a jade ruler in his hand. His body was filled with obscure and mysterious Taoist diagrams with amazing power. Ingzhan. He was the senior of the Ing clan of the Divine Clan. It was he who had launched the giant golden hand to capture Lin Sun. But he failed. Lin Sun was unscathed. In front of him, a 10,000-meter-high divine tree stood. Its branches were full of stars, like a chaotic starry sky, and its aura was strong. What a divine tree of myriad stars! Today, I will refine you into a Taoist soldier. With a cold and murderous voice, Ingzhan attacked again with the jade ruler in his hand. An ant trying to shake a tree. Don't overestimate yourself. Branches rushed out of the divine tree of myriad stars and extended to the starry sky, like a dancing whip of heaven. They fought fiercely with Ingzhan at the first moment. Between Lin Sun's eyebrows, looming golden Taoist patterns emerged. This was the power of Chen Linkong, which could make him unaffected by this kind of fighting force. Otherwise, he would be shocked to death by the terrible fighting waves at the first moment, not to mention killing his way out of this starry sky. "Go!" A loud shout rang out. In the void, a colorful pagoda suddenly appeared, rumbling and crushing the starry sky, covering Lin Sun's head. Another senior took action, summoning the pagoda and trying to take Lin Sun. At this critical moment, in the smelting god pot, a halberd suddenly broke through the air. Clang! The glowing pagoda was forcefully sent flying away. Looking at the person holding the halberd, wearing a black battle robe, his figure was as tall as a mountain, like a mighty and domineering emperor. It was the dark-blood underworld emperor. "Boy, just keep going." Holding the halberd, his cold eyes were like lightning as he opened the way in front. "Humph, just you." The owner of the pagoda appeared. It was a thin and short old man, carrying the pagoda and rushing over. The terrifying aura shook the starry sky, causing it to collapse and explode. Boom! Heaven and earth were overturned, and the starry sky was in disorder. Countless stars exploded in this supreme battle. The collapsing torrent of the Great Way swept and spread, causing a scene of destruction to appear in the void. Except for the divine city of fortune, all other places were in turmoil. Lin Sun took a deep breath and didn't watch the battle. He continued forward with the smelting god pot in his hand. P.S. Before 7 p.m. On the second watch, there will be more tonight. On the first day of the month, I urgently need a guaranteed monthly ticket. Chapter 29:13. Looking from the divine city of fortune. The starry sky was in chaos. The power of the eternal realm swept across, as if it was about to explode the starry sky. It was too terrifying. The eternal realm was beyond the immortal realm. Among the hundreds of divine clans in the divine ruins of fortune, there were not many divine clans that had eternal realm experts. But now, outside the divine city of fortune, a group of eternal realm experts had gathered and started a fierce battle in the starry sky. It was as if the world was going to be destroyed. God! How could this be? I didn't expect Lin Sun to invite an eternal realm expert to fight. This is too incredible. Fortunately, the divine city of fortune is covered by the power of rules. Otherwise, it would have been destroyed. The city was in an uproar. Countless cultivators were in a panic. This was an instinctive fear. Suddenly, A thunderous roar sounded in the starry sky. Kill! A spear descended from the apocalypse. There were hundreds of millions of ashes? Homuli ligulai. Pretty dowry mu ting 3? Bipa? Forcing moyaya? Lin Sun, who was walking in the void, suddenly felt a fatal threat. This old thing is not weak. Let me do it. In an ethereal and cold voice, Battle Emperor Wu Yang appeared. His slender figure was shrouded in a sparkling mist, faintly discernible. She swung her sword. Chi. Space was torn apart like a canvas, and then a peerless blade that carried a profound and unfathomable force forcefully blocked the spear that shot towards Qin Shi. The sword and spear clashed. A terrifying power spread out. Even if they were extremely far away, countless cultivators in Fortune City were still shocked to the point their scalps went numb when they witnessed this scene, and their souls almost left their bodies. This was like a battle between the gods in the legends. At the same time, Lin Sun's figure was about to be affected. A Sanskrit voice sounded from the smelting god pot. Tut! In an instant, the shock waves from the battle that had swept over suddenly dissipated. Then, the figure of Saint Buddha Xingjia walked out. He was solemn and dignified. There was no dust or dirt on his body. He glowed brightly and opened a path in front of Lin Sun. "Monk, you are asking for trouble." A muddy voice sounded in the depths of the starry sky. At this moment, Gao Yangjing made his move. Boom! As he took a step forward, the starry sky suddenly trembled. Rays of divine light that looked like blades and swords surged out from his body. As he waved his sleeve, these rays of divine light shot out explosively. Holy Buddha Xingjia put his palms together, and a Buddhist pagoda appeared in front of him. The body of the pagoda reflected a myriad of Buddhist lights, and it blocked the attack. But at this moment, a black wooden sword suddenly appeared and slashed at the back of Xingjia Holy Buddha's head. It was silent and unbelievably fast. Bang! However, this black wooden sword was fiercely smashed by a large hand, causing it to shake and fly backwards. 2 against 1? Shameless! The one who repelled the black wooden sword was the Dracophant War Tharch. He looked like an elegant youth, but his aura was so terrifying that it caused the starry sky to tremble. As he spoke, he flashed forward and struck out with his fist. At that instant, it seemed as if a colossal elephant was trampling through the starry sky and roaring into the sky, and even the stars seemed extraordinarily tiny in comparison. This was destined to be a chaotic battle. The myriad star divine tree, Dark Blood Emperor, Wuyang, Xingjia, Dragon Elephant, and other powerful figures walked out one after another to protect Lin Sun. However, they were also entangled by the enemies, and they fought fiercely in different areas of the starry sky. For a moment, the starry sky was simply plunged into chaos. Scenes of heaven and earth collapsing and everything collapsing could be seen everywhere. As Lin Sun continued forward, the old antiques from the various clans attacked one after another. Each of them displayed unimaginably terrifying power. Lin Sun couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Without a doubt, if he were in Lin Sun's place, he would have died countless times. Fortunately, the powerful figures from the ancient desolation realm in the smelting god pot were still there. As Lin Sun moved forward, they also appeared one after another, helping Lin Sun resolve the murderous dangers one after another. Kill! 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 The starry sky was overturned, and the Zhou void was in chaos. As he charged forward and displayed an unparalleled battle, the various Grand Tao laws swept out like a tsunami, and merely the aftershock of it was capable of easily destroying a world. This was too terrifying. Even though Lin Sun was protected by the power left by Chen Linkong, he still couldn't help but be shocked. This feeling was like an ant being swept into a stormy ocean. He was too small, and a wave could drown him countless times. Time seemed to be extraordinarily long at this moment. Soon, Lin Sun's face changed. In the distance ahead, 3 majestic and terrifying figures appeared. But in the smelting god pot, there was only one person left. Don't worry. Chun Linkong appeared, smiled, and patted Lin Sun on the shoulder, saying, "This has nothing to do with you. Just move forward." His voice was like magic, calming Lin Sun's tense state of mind. In the distance, 3 existences at the Eternal Realm came to kill. One of them held a cyan bronze mace and looked extremely powerful. One held a horsetail whisk and gently waved it, stirring up the void. The last one held a Taoist sword with a murderous aura covering the sky and the earth. Boom! The bronze mace was the first to hit, setting off a violent torrent of great path. Chun Linkong stretched out his hand and grasped the bronze mace firmly. He exerted force in his palm and fingers. Boom! The bronze mace and its owner were violently shaken out. Go to hell! A horsetail whisk descended like a burning waterfall of stars. In an instant, Lin Sun only felt as if he was in a flaming purgatory. Get out of here! Chun Linkong made a seal with his hands and pressed them forward. In the earth-shattering collision sound, the man holding the horsetail whisk staggered back, coughing up blood, and his expression changed suddenly. But at the same time, a Taoist sword stabbed straight between Chun Linkong's eyebrows. This sword seemed to ignore the obstruction of time and space. It was incredibly fast and indescribably fierce. Chun Linkong had no way to avoid it. But in the place between his eyebrows, an obscure and mysterious bronze cauldron appeared and blocked the sword at the critical moment. Clang! The sound of the collision seemed to tear the eardrum and shatter the mind. Where the sword and the cauldron collided, a terrible force burst out, causing the nearby starry sky to collapse. He blocked it. In the distance, the man who controlled the Taoist sword was surprised. You take my sword as well. Chun Linkong waved his sleeve. Swish! A mouthful of mysterious Taoist sword chi whistled out. Suddenly, the void seemed to be filled with sword chi, exploding with a loud bang. The unparalleled sword light poured down, reaching everywhere. Puff! Even though the man with the Dao sword had already dodged and blocked it, he was still struck by the sword chi to the point his figure staggered, and strands of cracks appeared on his body. The old man holding the bronze mace and the horsetail whisk changed his face slightly and rushed to kill Chun Linkong. My path can't be blocked by your Dharma image. Chun Linkong looked cold. He suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a flying sword filled with starlight, flashing in the void. Puff! The man holding the bronze mace was still on the way, but his body was divided into 2 halves. His pupils dilated and his face was full of disbelief. Boom! The next moment, the 2 halves of the body also burst into pieces. Lin Sun gasped. It was so easy to cut off the Dharma image of an eternal realm, which was too terrifying. Go! Chun Linkong said softly, and the flying sword flashed again. Oh no! The old man holding the horsetail whisk changed his face suddenly and was about to dodge. Puff! His head was directly cut off, and his body was destroyed by the unparalleled sword chi. These 2 consecutive kills also attracted the attention of other people on the battlefield, and there was a burst of exclamation. Different from other powerful figures in the ancient Desolation territory, Chun Linkong showed his unparalleled combat power as soon as he attacked. His flying sword seemed to be invincible, and its killing power was too horrible. Go! Chun Linkong said again. In the distance, the man holding the Taoist sword, who had already been injured, had no time to dodge. He was also killed by the sword. Lin Sun was shocked by the neat and tidy scene. This sword is called Banisher. It was given to me by my grandfather. I have cultivated it with my own cultivation for many years. It's easy for me to kill these Dharma images. Chun Linkong said with a smile. He took Lin Sun straight forward. Behind them, the sound of fighting shook the sky. Wu Yang, Long Xiang, and other powerful figures were still fighting fiercely with their opponents. Chun Linkong ignored them. He took a step forward and rushed forward with Lin Sun as if the stars were moving. But in just a moment, Chun Linkong suddenly stopped. At the same time, his banisher swept out and slashed in the void. Clang! In the distance, a dazzling saber appeared and blocked the banisher. Then, more terrifying figures appeared one after another. There were more than a dozen of them, and each of them had terrifying power. Among them were the 3 old fogies whose Dharma images had been killed by Chun Linkong just now. The true body is also here. Chun Linkong's eyes slightly narrowed. The true body of an eternal realm expert was much more powerful than the Dharma image, and the combat power they possessed was also worlds apart. Is it necessary to deal with a young man? Chun Linkong sighed. He's not an ordinary young man. A golden-robed old man looked indifferent. Where he stood, the starry sky was chaotic, and the power of rules was surging, as if to suppress his power, but he resisted and resolved them one by one. This meant that the power of rules in this starry sky had felt threatened and instinctively fought back, trying to expel these powerful figures. But unfortunately, the power of rules in this starry sky couldn't do anything to these real eternal realm experts. Little friend, take the refining god pot. I'll take you to kill them. Chun Linkong took a deep breath, and a touch of determination flashed in his eyes. Holding the banisher in his hand, he stepped into the starry sky and suddenly rushed over. Lin Sun was wrapped in his power and rushed forward closely with him. The dozen old fogies looked indifferent. One by one, they took out their treasures and suppressed Chun Linkong. Boom! The starry sky seemed to sink and the void cracked into countless pieces. A terrifying torrent of power spread, and everywhere it passed, there was a scene of destruction. Chun Linkong was shaken and took a few steps back. In the distance, the dozen old fogies couldn't help but have a strange look in their eyes. There was actually someone in this world who could block their joint attack. Again, Chun Linkong's body seemed to be burning, and the light shone brightly. Unparalleled divine power spread from his body, making him look like a peerless immortal, looking down at the heavens. He held the banisher and jumped forward.